year, since the Pritzker-Stratton administration stepped into office, we have clawed higher and higher out of the hole our predecessors dug. And year after year, Illinois has gotten stronger.
I'm trying to, what the predecessor, who was the previous governor of Illinois? Anybody know? The first thing to go, the first thing to cross my mind was Rahm Emanuel, but no, he was mayor of Chicago.
Illinois
This is the governor's, the governor and the lieutenant governor.
a resilient state.
I had real Ghostbusters toys. Yeah, there's toys for it, right? So I thought it was one of those cartoon, the shows that were, anyway, the Saturday morning shows.
Home to the most resilient people. We weather the harshest winters, and every spring we emerge more vibrant than we were at the first snowfall. But right now, we are standing in the middle of an Arctic blast, perpetuated by ego
Mr. Freeze. I mean, Trump.
and a disdain for basic human
But that's where my mind's at, right? He's Mr. Freeze.
decency. But we will not be buried, because we, your leaders, made a promise to stand up for each and every one of you, whether you agree with us or not. If you take nothing else away from today, take this. Donald Trump's administration has declared that their values
That's the chat of the day, Blitzkrieg.
are rooted in hate and the whims of a small few. But Illinois' values are rooted in compassion, as we work to uplift every community and every person without discrimination. There is no hate in Illinois' heart. I cannot say the same for the White Houses. Elections have
So there was a Republican governor in there before. Was there last Bruce Rauner?
consequences, and they're playing out right before your very eyes. And with that, I'll pass it to Attorney General Kwame.
We got the attorney generals now. These are the crucial players here in the states. The attorneys general. It is them who got a judge to put a freeze on the freeze and a temporary stay, or was it stay? No, it's not. I'm trying to think of the terminology. Anyway, the court halted the implementation of Trump's memo temporarily as a response to legal action from multiple states' attorneys general. So these are the point people, I guess, on in terms of what's going to happen here. Now, as Pritzker already said, Trump and his administration has walked back a portion of what was implied in the memo. They've said that it's a vague memo that was interpreted, very broadly. All right, very broadly, and as in impacting like lots of programs. And when that started to be implemented, and it was clear that there was going to be blowback from that, that's when the Trump administration came out and said, "Oh no, it didn't mean that. It actually meant this." So they're walking it back. They're retconning it. They're moving the goalpost, right? They're like, "Oh no, we didn't mean to imply that. No, you're going to get, your SNAP benefits. You're going to get, any number of things that were essentially had a halt put on them." But then with some verbiage that makes me really uncomfortable as far as what exactly ultimately Trump is going to be targeting with this memo. And likely, it'll be fought in court. So there's a temporary injunction. There we go. That's the word I'm looking. Yes, Will. Yes, you are so right, Will. It's injunction. Junction. What's your function?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Last night, I had one of my staff members stay up most of the night drafting a lawsuit in conjunction with 4 other states who...
Any lawyers in chat, does it feel good to draft a lawsuit? That sounds very satisfying. I wish I could draft a lawsuit. I would stay up all night. I would do that shit. I would
Contributing to the drafting of the lawsuit
still go to law school.
that will be filed today in Rhode Island. On behalf of Americans and all Illinois residents, I want to thank the governor and all the agencies that contributed to getting us the needed information for this action. The framers of our Constitution gave the power.
Sassy Sasserai says conservatives in that one subreddit are already making excuses for Trump and ignoring how the Medicaid got shut down. Allegedly, people had home loans and leases denied. Yeah, have you seen that cartoon? There's a cartoon of a conservative before November, and he's standing in front of eggs. They're $3.15 for a dozen, and he's like, the price of eggs is too high. And then it shows him like after January, and he's got a calculator, and he's like, well, actually, he's looking at like eggs that are twice as expensive, and he's like, well, actually, the price of eggs is multifactorial in nature, right? He's all of a sudden become very very geeky and nuanced about the reason for the price of eggs going up.
Other purse to Congress, not to the president.
I thought Trump said he was going to get us our eggs and bakey. That's what he said. That was his campaign slogan. He was like, wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey, vote for Trump.
In our lawsuit, we allege that our Constitution, through the separation of powers and
Chat is bullying you? No, I feel like chat should be bullying me. I'm describing a cartoon that I should just show you. Lawyers for losing sleep to help people? I want to draft a lawsuit, chat. That sounds so good. That sounds so satisfying. I used to file 100 cases against medical device companies as a paralegal. Very satisfying. That sounds so good.
Article 1, Section 1, and through the spending
How does a lawsuit smell?
clause gives
A new car?
Congress alone the responsibility to approve the appropriation and spending of federal funds, including to the states. The executive branch does not have the authority under the Constitution or federal law to pause or impose conditions on federal funding when those actions are arbitrary and capricious or otherwise violate the law, including the Administrative Procedures Act. This freeze will have a devastating impact, as you've heard, but it will have a devastating impact on public safety, prosperity, and quality of life for all Americans, and certainly citizens in the state of Illinois. I want to state clearly that Democrats and Republicans alike will negatively be impacted by the pause in funding. It impacts.
I feel like Trump would love to be able to make that not so. If he could find a way to do that, right? Remember when he wasn't going to give federal aid to California after the wildfires in 2017 or something like that? And they came to him and they said, actually, Mr. Trump, this is in a county. This fire was in a county where a lot of people voted for you. This was a heavily Republican district, you know? And he was like, oh, they like me? Okay, they get aid.
Our office's ability to go after offenders who prey on our children, because it impacts our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. That task force.
Legal Eagle was low-key sweating for freedom? Sweating for freedom?
Has enabled us to capture a record number of child predators. Since 2019, over 900 child sexual predators have been arrested. In addition, the freeze impacts burn JAG funding that undermines the work that our law enforcement partners try to do to fight crime. It impacts our ability to provide for our veterans who have served our country. Head Start and child care programs, devastating blow to research conducted by our universities and research labs. It takes away critical support to operations for agriculture. And, we heard a lot about the price of
Now that sounds like a sexy lawsuit. A FOIA? Oh, hell yeah. Sign me up.
eggs over the last few weeks.
Wait, did he say egg?
To operations for agriculture. And, we heard a lot about the price of eggs over the last few weeks. One of the things it impacts is the ability for inspectors to make sure that salmonella doesn't contaminate our eggs and creates a backlog. And Illinois is one of the major producers of eggs. So I don't want to hear Donald Trump talk about the price of eggs anymore. I don't know who's advising OMB on this act. I don't know if...
And this is what I'm wondering about too, right? Because from what I've seen about Donald Trump's executive orders, most of them, it feels like he's never heard of it before. It's just people that he trusts telling him this is good legislation. And those people, you could have read their names on the leaks about Project 2025. That information, the identity of the people behind Project 2025 was leaked by a furry hacktivist before the election. And those same people are largely making up Trump's cabinet and are enacting that agenda. So
Dr. Phil is somehow embedded in OMB.
fucking Dr. Phil. Oh my God, I saw this. This guy's reading my mind. All right, I was just talking about eggs. Now we got Dr. Phil. Have you seen, Chad? I don't think I can show you this clip just because Dr. Phil, I feel like he copyright claims. I know the Majority Report showed a little bit of his show. He's going along with ICE on arrests, and he's wagging his finger at the immigrants. He's like, don't you came into this country illegally. You listen here, you need some tough love. What? This is unreal that Dr. Phil is on TV doing fascist propaganda. Fuck. I mean, there was something a little bit fascist, I guess, about all the, troubled teens that he would exploit. There was something a little fash-esque about what Dr. Phil was always about. But yeah, this is just this is way too literal here.
OMB now. But I can tell you that on January 20th, we had...
Like, Chad, I swear to God, was it Dr. Phil or was it... Oh my God, I can't remember what it was. The worst, one of those troubled teens thing I ever saw was a talk show host going into the troubled teen's bedroom and it basically calling her a slut and having her throw her mattress out because she was a dirty girl. Like, I kid you not. It was like that kind of shit. Like that. I don't know if I think that wasn't Dr. Phil though. I think that was some other Dr. Phil. Like, there was a lot of those shows. Do you remember, chat? There was a lot of those shows that were just like Dr. Phil.
A peaceful transfer of power. We had an inauguration, but it was not a coronation. Congress is given the power to appropriate. The executive branch cannot unilaterally disregard appropriations passed by a separate and equal house of government. While I am sincerely prepared to work with the new administration, as I did during the first Trump presidency, I will not stand silent while they try to impose unconstitutional mandates. And with that, I pass it back to the governor.
Thanks. Happy to take questions from members of the media. Yep. Olivia.
Governor, did you see any reports of actual patients who were affected by the Medicaid issue today, or was it just kind of between the governments speaking to each other? And at what point would it start to affect patients?
Jerry Springer did troubled teen stuff too.
let's step back just
I thought Jerry Springer did like fights or something.
for a moment and let me remind you that nothing that came in the memo last night would indicate that all of a sudden you'd have the systems going offline. And yet that's exactly what happened, because they intend to make cuts to these programs. That's why they went offline. Don't let them fool you that there was some kind of website outage. That's not what happened.
That's kind of what that's where they walked it back to, right? So they issue a memo, the websites are all down, you know, as in like Medicaid, the Medicaid portal is down amongst other important websites. You know, these things have been cut. But you know, the memo gets written, the website goes down, and then only after all this pushback, all this bad press for the Trump administration, only then do they say, actually, we weren't trying to cut that, and they clarify the memo. But if nobody had complained, if that had just gone through smooth sailing, like, they would have stuck with it.
And so when does this affect people? Well, every day we access the Medicaid system to get reimbursed for people's services that they get from their doctors. Every day. $104 million is what we would have gotten today had we been able to access it on time. And so it does affect us, and it affects people's ability to access services. And let me remind you again that their intention was not to pull it back online today. It's clear, right? You think it's an accident that the memo came out last night, and then this morning our state agency.
Chad, does anybody know, is this typical of the Democrats? Are the Democrats all on this shit, or is it just like Pritzker? He's the first one that I've heard just straight up call them out like this. I don't know if that's
like Medicaid could not access those systems. It's not an accident. The intention here is to disrupt. The intention here is to make cuts, and it will affect people all across our state. Yeah.
Governor, how does
Tina.
this impact your planning for your budget this year, what you've seen so far? We're hitting 9. I'm sure that is there extra funding need for certain things, maybe more legal resources? How is it impacting that?
Well, as I've said, we don't know. We think that it may, and we're certainly thinking about how we will deal with that in the budget, but we don't know exactly. And that's one of the problems. Again, no communication. No communication. That memo actually wasn't to us, but it was posted online, so everybody could see it. And indeed, the actions that were taken today, no one was warned about. So we're not sure how we'll be affected, but we certainly are on guard.
You mentioned this.
Yes, Paris.
The judge has already put a stay on.
Yes.
Does that mean that all the grants, universities, and hospitals have to go back into action? Is everything back up and running?
Well, the concern, I mean, I'd like to turn it over to our Attorney General, but the concern is that when you've got, you know, the efforts by the administration to cut those off, and then a temporary, this is only essentially a temporary restraint. There isn't a TRO, but
and there's no guarantee that it won't go to a judge next who decides that, you know, it should stay in place. The memo should stay in place while its legality is decided, right? The judges can go back and forth on this sort of stuff. It's just the first judge that they got did an injunction, so we don't know how long that injunction might stay in place.
it's a stay. We don't know when that'll be lifted. We don't know what the action will be. And if you're a university and you're planning on investing in research or laboratory work, right, do you start doing it now, not knowing if a week from now that temporary stay will be lifted? But I'd like to turn it over to the Attorney General.
That was actually
My law degree came in handy.
exactly.
Like, what I'm saying, Chad, is should I like be just like, oh God, Illinois, you kind of kick ass? Did I luck out on watching the Illinois government react to this? Are other, you know, governors or other governors of blue states making the same connections and not giving Trump unnecessary charitability? Because I mean, like, there are a lot of Democrats and a lot of people in general that are trying to kiss Trump's ass right now. So, I mean, I guess it seems refreshing.
Right on point. And let's be clear, we are not party to that action in the district court in Washington, and so we don't control what may go one way or the other with that. The action that we and 21 other states are joined into is in Rhode Island, and it is temporary stay, as the governor pointed out, and the unpredictability that's caused by this. And I can tell you, I started my day out at a higher education institution. Everybody's up in arms about this because you rely on predictability of what you will be able to spend throughout the year.
Yeah, and just to remind you that, if you're a doctor and you take Medicaid patients, which we want doctors to do, now you don't know if you're going to get reimbursed, and you don't know when that'll be lifted and when you're going to get paid. And we don't want to go back to the days of Bruce Rauner when people waited nearly forever.
That's they're really hitting the previous administration. I don't know how long ago that was, but it feels like there's memories or something. I don't know, chat. Anybody know about, like, should I look up Bruce Rauner? Was his government just he's making it sound like it was a disaster back under the Bruce Browner administration? Oh God, those were terrible times.
Forever to get paid.
It took us a million years to clean the diarrhea out of the governor's mansion. It was sprayed all over the place at an unbelievably high velocity.
Yes. You're in the wrong press conference room, aren't you? Haven't seen you here before. Welcome. Yeah.
You stated that Donald Trump has broken the law, and then you repeated that.
Yep.
You just mentioned that you are an attorney. Please tell me, what is the statute that he's broken?
Oh no!
Well, as I say, by the way, the court...
look, they did a little bit of that too, Will. Schumer's response was to criticize Trump from the right for saying he's defending the police. He's defunding the police. Yeah, accuse him of wanting to defund the police. There we go. That's how you do it, Schumer. There was a little bit of this here too. I think the Attorney General mentioned the police, were among those that were not getting the money that they needed.
The court has recognized that he does not have the authority.
Has anyone heard from Tim Waltz? Actually, Lady Badash, I've got a Tim Waltz video. I've got that coming up, I think.
To stop what is a congressional mandate, a congressional law passed, signed by a previous president, been in law for many, many years, Medicaid, for example. He doesn't have the ability to stop.
We do have.
So that is what's illegal.
Slightly off topic, but on the topic of the illegals, there are over 400,000 illegal aliens, migrants in the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago. Many of them have committed crimes, have detention orders. Essentially, as long as I can remember, due to the sanctuary city, now essentially state, and of course your Safety Act, essentially we
Thank you, Zoo. Welcome to the stream.
have a revolving door of criminals committing heinous crimes, the most heinous of crimes. And I'm wondering, is you were on CNN?
Because it was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
In the state of Illinois, would you are you going to hand over the list of repeat violent illegal alien offenders to?
Oh my God.
To be clear, people who are being held in our jails and prisons, we do not have a record of if they are undocumented or not. We don't keep those records. Hang on, the judge, that is not how a court system works. That's not how a corrections system work. When a judge sentences somebody, they are remanded to the Department of Corrections. We have their name, the sentence, we have the offense that they committed, and we keep them in our prison. And by the way, you don't want us to let them out of prison. When they do finally get out of prison, if there is a warrant, or while they're in prison, if a federal official shows up with a criminal warrant to pick them up, we hand them over. That's how it works. Look, we have worked with the federal government for many, many years in the state of Illinois to apprehend violent criminals of all sorts. We have task forces that work between the Chicago Police Department, the state of Illinois, the state police of Illinois. federal officials at the FBI, for example, right? That we work together to take guns off the streets, to take drugs off the streets, to go after gangs, and we continue to do that every day. So that is work that continues, and if you should go back and read the Trust Act because it doesn't say what you are alleging.
So he's from Chicago. Yeah, that's,
It says, yeah.
On several $billions worth of federal funding that is already kind of baked into
First, when he says gangs, I'm thinking of Al Capone, but no.
the 5-year analysis that your administration put out in November. I mean, there's about $4 billion, each year that roughly you get from the federal government. So
Yeah.
with the deficit already projected, are you counting on that federal?
We're relying on the law, which says that, no, I mean, really, this is every year we know this is the way we make projections. This has happened not just under Joe Biden or Donald Trump, but for many, many years in the past, right? If there is federal funding that is to come to the states, Medicaid is an example of it, we know what we will
Yeah,
get
Chad, I'm wondering, are we looking at the 2028 candidate here?
from the Medicaid system when we submit those bills.
But given the uncertainty now, how are you planning on?
You can't. And as I said to Tina just a few minutes ago, we don't know exactly. We don't know what the impact on our budget will be. We're certainly
I
trying
mean, I'm not expecting a lot from the Democratic Party, to be honest.
to determine what contingencies we need to make. But right now, we're assuming the law will be followed. We're assuming the courts will follow the law. And so we've built that into the budget, but nothing more. Yeah, Shia.
Do you have like an action plan, knowing that this could be ongoing? Like, do you have a team looking at what happens if?
Well, this is less than 24 hours old, so I appreciate.
My question is, did any of the Dems have an action plan? Because I don't think that this was to be unexpected. I don't think that any of this is unexpected.
Appreciate your giving us credit for being able.
Yeah, I know, right? He's a billionaire. I'm just thinking the Democrats don't have a lot, do they? Like in terms of backbench talent, Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, people are saying AOC, but she seems to be somebody the democratic institution is really still treating like shit, despite the fact that she's playing such an inside game now. Oh, by the way, that's on the vote for the dono goal, right? The Emma and Vanguard, a little debatey debate about AOC and how she's done lately. They don't entirely agree. So that's at 28%. We got the Destiny update, Lonerbox and Pixie in first place at 37%. Oh, the Discord link is bad? Oh my god. There's a Discord link. Yeah, the philosophy tube looks like it's actually got some motion on it because of the donation, right? When you donate, you can add to one of these topics. You can give it a little buff and it'll add to the percentage it gets in the poll. The poll is over on the YouTube full screen chat. So if you're in shorts, feel free to come over, leave a vote, tell me what you want to see as your bonus content, the content that I cover after I'm done covering everything else. And leave a like while you're there because it helps me out greatly. YouTube, Twitch, you're all invited.
Quite like this. This was literally, this memo that came out last night was something quite sweeping. Now, could you imagine
Chuck E. Cheese for president?
that they would go after the programs that they're going after? Sure, but certainly not all at once, which is what they've done. And we've seen it across the country. I've talked to...
We need a new system? Oh my god, Blitzkrieg. Yeah, we do. We need a new party. And I don't know if that's something you can put together in 4 years. And yeah, ideally, we need a new system, a new mode of production, one might say.
Governors, I've talked to other federal elected officials. No one expected this. Yeah.
Can I ask you this, though? Other than legal challenges, what really can you do? As the lieutenant governor mentioned, elections have consequences.
Yeah.
And he has a majority in the House and the Senate. So other than complaining, what can you do?
Well, again, we can make sure that we're following the law, which we always do, and that the federal government is following the law when it comes to the state of Illinois. So that's most of what we can do. I think the rest is we've passed laws in the
The problem is the existence of the executive order. You mean as like a power of the presidency?
state of Illinois to protect
Or do you mean the use of the way it's used?
people, and will continue.
Maybe a parliamentary system. Oh my God, I'd be so down. I mean, I don't know if it. Chat, the thing is, all right, here's my fear. I'm afraid that Trump is going to try to make things worse and worse for people until the blue states can't deal with it anymore. And he is going to bait the blue states into some sort of a, secession or a referendum, or, he's going to bait the blue states into something like that. And then he's going to try to do a just civil war against the rebellion. That's my fear, is that that's what he's going for, right?
Continue to look for ways to continue to focus in on the things that are most threatened, and where they are threatened, we will take action.
Discretionary funding.
Wait, I'm sorry, I want to get somebody who hasn't.
Governor, several of the
Yes.
nonprofits that rely on this funding have said that they
Yeah. Sue, for the record, I think you've got a point. Also, Blitzkrieg, I think you've got a point. We need a new system. And the current one is fucked up in so many ways. I mean, that's just the executive branch, right? That we're talking about with the EOs that Trump has issued. We've also got a judicial branch that's overreaching. We've got, none of the branches of government are doing very well right now. Let's just put it that way.
Questionnaires from the federal government asking very specific questions on how they use this funding, whether they use it to support in documented that supports abortion. Should these programs, these leaders of these programs, should they be concerned? What message does it send that these types of questions are being asked of these nonprofits?
Well, first of all, I would ask the question, does the law suggest that the federal government has the...
He's going to use the precedent, right, of the way that Americans see the first Civil War, even though a lot of his voters have like the Confederate flag tattoos and have the lost cause tattooed on their heart, right? A lot of his voters don't accept the result of the Civil War, but he's going to try to portray it as that, like, right? If it's the blue state seceding, and he's like doing a war to be like hold the Union together, then he gets to portray himself as the good guy.
The ability.
As opposed to, if he was trying to lead a secession movement while he was out of power.
Now to impose new restrictions by virtue of the questions that may be asked. I don't know the answer to because I don't know which agencies you're talking about, but I do know that they should make sure that they have a good attorney. Unfortunately, I think what the Trump administration is doing is a full employment act for lawyers. And the fact is that we need to protect the agencies that are serving the people of Illinois. So we're going to do everything that we can in Illinois to protect them. Yeah.
Have you been in contact with the administration? Have they reached out to you?
Sorry, I was a little late on that one.
I think I said earlier in my remarks that when our agencies reached out to the federal agencies, we literally were informed that they are not to speak with us. Yeah. Yes.
Can you explain how the Head Start program and the child care centers here in Illinois are going to be affected?
Yeah. So I don't know how they'll be affected in the future. I can tell you what happened today and therefore what could happen. Today, there were several agencies, Head Start agencies, that would not have been able to pay their payrolls. And indeed, one of them informed us that if they couldn't get paid by the end of the day, that they might have to close their doors and lay everybody off. So, look, we know from the pandemic that our child care system across the country is fragile. And if you take one day,
Tomorrow is RFK's hearing. Yes, you're correct. Infallible foul.
1 week, 1 month away from those payments, away from those agencies, they will likely close because they're on the edge. Remember, a lot of the agencies that provide these services don't have a balance sheet. So they don't have a bank account they can go to and rely upon while they're waiting to get paid. We saw that once again in Illinois under the previous governor when there were 2 years without a budget. We saw lots of agencies close, and they sometimes never reopen. So the danger is very, very high.
Can you talk about the impacts of higher education, how you're planning on watching out for it as soon as this does go through?
Again, we have contemplated what might happen, and
Yeah, me too, Sassy Sasser. I feel like I should have a special compressor just for press conferences.
I think you saw today that there were a couple of
Like a hard limit on top, and then just like very low threshold.
universities
Wait,
that
no, is it a very low threshold or?
have stopped some of the programs that they were planning to go forward with. Again, not because they were in violation of law, but because they've been threatened now by the President of the United States and his administration unlawfully. But they are concerned that, waiting for a judge to finally make a decision might be devastating for a university. So we're going to do everything we can to protect them, but there are some things, we cannot make up for billions of dollars of Medicaid that might be taken away from the state of Illinois. We cannot make up for hundreds of millions of dollars that might go to universities or might be taken away from our state universities. So I'm concerned, deeply concerned.
This will be the last question.
What is your contingency plan, though? I just really want to understand. We've got like 2 or 3 weeks left in the budget, so there must be something that you can tell us in terms of the steps that the state is taking to.
I think the thing that's important to understand is that during the first Trump administration, he was forced to choose from people that were considered competent, more or less, usually less, for the job that he was nominating them for. And because of that, there were guardrails in that, there's some things that no administration, no government would do, right? There's some really obvious things that you would stay away from. Third rails, you might call them. And, the people that are competent to run each of the, what they're nominated for are going to be the people that know where the third rails are and not to touch them. This is a government specifically selected for loyalty above all else, right? Loyalty to Trump. Now, that doesn't mean that he is going to be the intellectual driving engine of this whole thing. It is very likely that a lot of the policy he's just not interested in. And he's going to go with the people that he likes, the people that say good things about him.
It was so peaceful up
Kind of how this works out.
freaking communist invading radicals.
The people that kiss his ass, he's going to go with those people as his
It was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading.
as who's actually writing the policy. And it's Project 2025. If you want to know vaguely who we're talking about, it is the same names that were revealed in the hack of Project 2025.
Address some of this.
Look, you saw that that COVID-19 you couldn't plan for. And yet, months into a fiscal year, we had to make significant changes in our budget. We had to make cuts to deal with what we saw were deteriorating revenues to the state, right, because of COVID-19. We made $700 million of cuts to deal with that in 2020, 2021. We may have to do that in this budget, this coming budget, or in the current budget year. We just don't know. And so when you say contingency plans, it's not like there's some, magic money that's sitting in, buried under the governor's mansion. Or
It's national treasure, right? It's in the nose of who is it, like George Washington? Isn't that there's contingency money, yeah, buried in the nasal passages of the presidents on Mount Rushmore that the states can draw from if in case of emergency. The Heritage Foundation, yeah, huge overlap with that for sure. But I mean, that's who's writing, and Trump's most of the stuff he's not that interested in. There are probably a few things that he has a very particular opinion on, and or I mean, like if it was windmills, for instance, right? Trump's not gonna let someone recommend windmills. He knows that he doesn't like windmills. He knows that windmills are the worst thing. They're bad for the birds. They're bad for the whales. They're bad for his golf course. He doesn't like windmills. He's tilting permanently at windmills. But other than that, right, most of the stuff is up for grabs. If you watched him do his executive orders, he was like, what's this one? And they'd explain it to him. Mr. President, this one involves cryptocurrency. We're going to be the world leader in cryptocurrency. And I was like, oh, I like that. We like the crypto, don't we? He doesn't know what he's signing. Most of it, he does not know what he's signing.
Buried under the Capitol. There just isn't. We'll do what we need to do when the time comes, but we certainly are evaluating what that challenge might be and how we might overcome it, but I don't have an answer for you.
Right, and what I'm saying, Will, is that those people are overrepresented in Trump's government. In other words, the people involved with the creation of Project 2025 at the Heritage Foundation.
Today, again, 21 hours after we've been informed.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
All right, well, there's J.B. Pritzker, very likely a candidate in 2028. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I feel pretty satisfied with that. Again, chat, we were watching the Illinois government react to this, not for any particular reason, but it ended up pretty well because he did pin this on the Trump administration, right? They are now trying to walk back the memo and say that the memo was not an attempt to cut all of these things that it, essentially halted today. That this was all a big misunderstanding, and they weren't going to touch that stuff. But Pritzker's skeptical, and I am skeptical. I am as well. What the fuck? What is even going on with this? Oh my god, what the hell?
Mr. Melancholy, how bad?
What? Okay, I'm sorry. There it is.
Their own citizens.
Okay, so we watched Governor Pritzker.
It was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, his lieutenant governor, and his attorney general.
It was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
Give their response to the memo that was passed last night, which this morning resulted in Medicare portals across all 50 states being shut down. and a lot of other programs being in doubt as well, as far as not receiving their federal money. This was abated today when states attorneys general from multiple blue states filed a case getting an injunction on Trump's cutting of these funds, and at least a temporary reprieve for all the people that would have been affected. We're looking at 72 million people potentially affected from Medicaid alone. A lot of people were going to suffer from this, and may still suffer. It's still unclear what the court is going to do with this. There was a temporary injunction passed. That's not to say that it won't be lifted, right? So that could happen. And as far as the Trump's intentions, right, it was clear that at first the intentions were to deliver as sweeping of cuts as they possibly could. They went for these cuts. That's what J.B. Pritzker was saying. They may have backed off of this. I don't know if it was in this press conference or if it was later, but they seem to have walked some of it back, denying that certain things like SNAP and Medicaid would be cut. But that remains to be seen. And every indication is that's what they were trying to do. They may be backing off of it because there was a huge public reaction against this, as you could imagine. When you take 72 million people's health care away, there's not going to be a good reaction. So Trump may be trying to retcon what the memo actually meant and try to circumscribe it. We're going to get some idea about what might actually be on the chopping block, what Trump may actually be looking to cut from this. But, this is also, the possibility that he's using this as leverage. That he's going to try to cut funding and only restore it under certain conditions. This is what the game he's playing in terms of relief for the fires in LA. It's the game that he's playing with that. So it may be, he might try that strategy as well. But what's clear to J.B. Pritzker and clear to me was that they were sending up a weather balloon, a trial balloon, a test balloon, whatever the hell that balloon is called, that you send up to figure out what the weather is, which way the wind is blowing, and if you can get away with Javier Milei style austerity in the United States of America.
Since taking the oath of office, President Trump has taken more than 300 executive actions, secured nearly $1 trillion in U.S. investments, deported illegal alien rapists, gang members, and suspected terrorists from our homeland, and restored common sense to the federal government. I want to take a moment to go through some of these extraordinary actions. On day one, President Trump declared a national emergency at our southern border to end the 4-year-long invasion of illegal aliens under the previous administration. Additionally, President Trump signed an executive order to end catch and release and finish construction of his effective border wall. By using every lever of his federal power, President Trump has sent a loud and clear message to the entire world. America will no longer tolerate illegal immigration, and this president expects that
It's so weird. I wonder how the news media would take it if there were a leader of another nation that was complaining about American immigrants. Like it's so weird the way that they direct it. It's like it's because of it's not that people immigrated from Venezuela, particularly because Trump put sanctions on Venezuela. It's not that. It's that Venezuela sent people. They sent very bad people. They sent rapists and murderers. They sent Hannibal Lecter. They sent criminals. That's how he words it. That's how this administration is wording it. Why did you do this to us? Why did you do this to us, Mexico? Why did you do this to us, Honduras? Why did you do this to us, Venezuela? You sent the bad people over here, right? That's not how immigration works. And people don't leave their homes for the fuck of it. people don't leave their homes for like a fun adventure north of the border. It's because there's something really fucked up going on in their country usually. And oftentimes in the Western hemisphere, that fucked up thing is a direct result of US foreign policy. So in this case, like with Venezuela, like I was pointing out, Trump actually created the crisis that he benefited from, the crisis that he ran on. That wave of immigration from Venezuela, that was Trump's doing. That was his foreign policy at work. But no, blame, the leader of, blame the president of Colombia.
Every nation on this planet will cooperate with the repatriation of their citizens. As proven by this weekend, when President Trump swiftly directed his team to issue harsh and effective sanctions and tariffs on the Colombian government, upon hearing they were denied a U.S. military aircraft full of their own citizens who were deported.
Her necklace isn't even a cross, it's a plus sign. Yeah, I think she's AI.
By this administration.
She's AI slop.
Within hours, the Colombian government agreed to all of President Trump's demands, proving America is once again
I want her to hold her hands up so we can see how many fingers she has.
respected on the world stage. So, to foreign nationals who are thinking about trying to illegally enter the United States, think again. Under this president, you will be detained.
We have to see what she looks like eating spaghetti, chat, to know if she's AI or not. I think she's AI.
You will be deported. Every day, Americans are safer because of the violent criminals that President Trump's administration is removing from our communities. On January 23rd, ICE New York arrested a Turkish national for entry without inspection who is a known or suspected terrorist. On January 23rd, ICE San Francisco.
So, chat, I think that, look, I've got some ideas, as far as narrative. Because the thing about the Trump administration this early on is that there's so many executive orders coming down, this dictator on day one thing, the Project 2025 being just ready to go, and them trying to, maximize the effect that they have on the country by just, hyper speeding it. You've got to find a meta narrative. You've got to find a through line in what the Republicans are doing. One such through line
Up here, but now there are freaking communists.
has to do with violence and crime. We have the Trump administration conducting a mandatory, 1,800 deportations per day. They have a quota of the number of people that they want to deport. And they're talking about, violent criminals, but that is certainly not all that they're sweeping up. So we've got, and when we talk about the population, the undocumented as a population, we're talking about a population with a lower crime rate than citizens. And so we're casting peaceful people, many of whom just want to work and send money home to their families. People that are exploited in order to provide the United States with food in many cases. We're going to call them rapists and murderers and awful criminals. They're Hannibal Lecter, right? But you know who's totally cool and peaceful and innocent? Those convicted of crimes as a result of January 6th. People, including the leader of the Oath Keepers, whose family is afraid of what will happen if he is released. People that are, I think, 3 or 4 of them have been arrested again already? One of them died in a exchange of gunfire with police, right? That you let him out of jail, and what happens? Wow, it's just like, it doesn't even take them any time to. But no, we're supposed to be worried about the immigrants. That's where the violence comes from, not the people that the president of the United States just commuted. because he wants to have a violent goon squad on call. That's a through line. Criminality. Alleged and real. Alleged in the case of the immigrants who are under the crosshairs of the Trump administration right now, and real when it comes to the actual Trump administration, whether it be his nominees or him himself. This is the most corrupt era of U.S. government, and that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot.
Arrested a citizen of Mexico unlawfully present in the United States who has been convicted of continuous sexual abuse of a child aged 14 years or younger. ICE St. Paul has arrested a citizen of Honduras who was convicted of 4th-degree criminal sexual conduct with a minor. ICE Buffalo arrested a citizen of Ecuador who has been convicted of rape. ICE Boston arrested a citizen of the Dominican Republic who has a criminal conviction for 2nd-degree murder. This criminal was convicted of murder for beating his pregnant wife to death in front of her 5-year-old son. And ICE St. Paul also arrested a...
God, I'm afraid this is what press conferences are going to be like for 4 years.
Citizen of Mexico.
I mean, I don't know. These press secretaries usually don't last the entire administration for whatever reason. They usually get changed.
Who was convicted of possessing pornographic material of a minor on a work computer. These are the heinous individuals that this administration is removing from American communities every single day, and to the brave state and local law enforcement officers, CBP, and ICE agents who are helping in the facilitation of this deportation operation, President Trump has your back, and he is grateful.
She talks like a cop. The facilitation of this here deportation operation. We have the perp in, we have visual on the perp. I need to learn to, like, the cop speak is kind of a skill. You know what I'm talking about though, chat. You know cop language, right?
For your hard work. On the economic front, President Trump took immediate action to lower costs for families who are suffering from 4 long years of the Biden administration's destructive and inflationary policies. President Trump ordered the heads of all executive departments and agencies to help deliver emergency price relief to the American people.
Is that why eggs are $7 now? Is that right?
Untangle our economy from Biden.
I feel like he needs to try harder. Or he could stop doing things that actually raise the price of necessary goods.
Regulatory constraints and end the reckless war on American energy. President Trump also
does the administration starting trade wars, which will definitely raise the prices.
Signed sweeping executive orders to end the weaponization of government and restore common sense to the federal bureaucracy. He directed all federal agencies to terminate illegal diversity, equity, and inclusion programs to help.
No, Joey, let the pettiness flow.
Return America to a
I swear to God, this lady is AI.
Merit-based society. President Trump also signed an executive order declaring it is now the policy of the federal government that there are only 2 sexes, male and female. Sanity has been restored.
You got the egg hookup, says DJ Giga, right from the chicken's butt?
Before I take your questions, I would like to point out to all of you once again have access to the most transparent and accessible president in American history.
Oh my God.
There has never been.
Look, she's good at being the spokeswoman for like an evil organization.
President who communicates with the American people.
She's supposed to try to put a human face on an inhuman administration. I don't think she's doing that good of a job, though.
And the American press corps as openly and authentically as the 45th and now 47th President of the United States. This past week, President Trump has held multiple news conferences, gaggled on Air Force One multiple times, and sat down for a 2-part interview on Fox News, which aired last week. As Politico summed it up best, Trump is everywhere again. And that's because President Trump has a great story to tell about the legendary American revival that is well underway. And in keeping with this
You gotta say yeehaw. If you're gonna say legendary American revival that is well on its way, you gotta end that with a yeehaw.
revolutionary media approach that President Trump deployed during the campaign, the Trump White House will speak to all media outlets
She should have a MAGA hat on. Come on.
and personalities, not just the legacy media who are seated in this room. Because according to recent polling from Gallup, Americans' trust in mass media has fallen to a record low.
Oh, she's actually showing a chart back there. We can't really see it. But
Millions of Americans, especially young people, have turned from traditional television outlets and newspapers to consume their news from podcasts, blogs, social media, and other independent outlets. It's essential to our team that we share President Trump's message everywhere and adapt this White House to the new media landscape in 2025. To do this,
shove it down the throats of the kids through their TikTok app. That's right. When we force the sale to a Trump administration ally.
excited to announce the following changes.
When we close down TikTok and force everyone back onto Facebook.
Will be made to this
We'll force everyone to become boomers.
historic change.
That's what the Trump administration is about. It's about taking everyone and turning them into boomers.
Briefing
This is a boomer supremacy presidency.
where Mr. Brady's legacy will endure. This White House believes strongly in the First Amendment, so it's why our team will work diligently to restore the press passes of the 440 journalists whose passes were wrongly revoked by the previous administration. We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices
You will repost AI Jesus made of shrimp.
who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover
Hello, fellow kids.
this White House. And you can apply now on our new website, whitehouse.gov/newmedia.
Jink typing furiously.
Starting today, this seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat.
They're trying to socially engineer the press corps. I don't know what result this will have. I mean, look, the press corps is pretty fucking feckless. They'll go along to get along. Like they will obey Trump in advance. But I mean, this is just over the top. Like she's negging them. She's like, legacy media like you, I guess we'll let you continue to cover us in the press conference, but the first seat from now on will be reserved for someone with over 1 million followers on TikTok. Do you have over 1 million followers on TikTok? I didn't think so.
My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants.
We'll let the press stand in the back, past the podcasters and the mommy vloggers.
Who meet our criteria and pass United States
And Asmongold, yes. And Asmongold and Aiden, yeah.
service requirements to enter the White House complex. So in light of these announcements,
You should apply. I could.
our first questions for today's briefing will go to these new media members whose outlets, despite being some of the most viewed news websites in the country, have not been given seats in this room. And before I turn to questions, I do have
I want you to look at your new social betters.
directly from the President of the United States. That was just shared with me in the Oval Office. From President Trump directly, an update on the...
They're gonna have like what? They're gonna have Da Fuck Boom up there as like, you know, this YouTube creator has over 50 million subscribers.
New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy. A statement from the President of the United States to start this briefing with some news. And with that, I will turn it over to questions, and we will begin with our new media members.
So fucking awkward.
Mike Allen from Axios, Matt Boyle from Breitbart. Mike, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you very much. Caroline, does the president see anything fishy about DeepSeek, either its origins or its cost? And could China's ability to make these models quicker, cheaper, affect our thinking about expanding generation data centers, chip manufacturing?
Sure.
They look scared, don't they? These guys look like...
The president was asked about DeepSeek last night on Air Force One when he gathered.
They also look like they're not seeing the light very often.
For I think the third or fourth time throughout the weekend with members of the traveling press corps. The president said that he believes that this is a wake-up call to the American AI industry.
Here's the deal. We'll just change all my branding so that I look like a country singer. And then they will definitely bring me on.
The last administration sat on their hands and allowed China to rapidly develop this AI program. And so President...
Who allowed China to do it? You only restricted the chips that they could get, not whether they could get...
Trump believes in restoring American AI dominance, and that's why he took very strong executive action this past week to sign executive orders.
The funny thing is that you actually didn't have to fund anything. Like, you actually didn't have to. China did it without like 1/10 of the money. No, not even that. I feel like it's 100th. It's some I mean, we're talking about DeepSeek, chat. This is the new AI that is equal or better to ChatGPT 01. This one is R1. And yeah, it was developed for like a fraction of the price that has gone into American AI models. And yeah, it's it supposedly it's able to operate under much less compute power, I guess. Although some people are disputing that. Some people are saying that they think that they secretly got some chips smuggled in, and that's how they were able to...
some of the onerous regulations on the...
Thank you, Narwhal by Nature, for the 5 gifted memberships. Juice Malone, you just got weaseled. Austin Silver, you just got weaseled. Sniggity Snail, you just got weaseled. And John Bogner and Michael Jungal, you just got weaseled, and that's a good thing.
The AI industry, and President Trump has also proudly appointed the first AI and crypto czar at this White House.
Wait, is it you? Oh no, I thought she was saying the first AI czar. I thought she was going to be the AI czar, chat, because I think that she's AI. I think that cross, like the AI didn't know that the it's supposed to be longer than it is wide, and it just made a plus sign. I think it's she's not showing us her fingers, chat. I think this is AI. I think she is AI. She's an AI VTuber press secretary.
I spoke with yesterday. Very knowledgeable.
There's her hands, as if just to spite me.
On this subject, and his team.
Fine. I want to see you eat spaghetti.
Is here working every single day to ensure American AI dominance. As for the national security implications, I spoke with NSC this morning. They are looking into what those may be, and when I have an update, I will share it.
Carolyn, you say restore U.S. dominance. Is there a fear that the U.S. either is fallen or has fallen behind? And how would the president make sure the U.S. stays ahead?
No, the president is confident that we will restore American dominance in AI. Matt.
So, Caroline, first off, thank you to you and President Trump for actually giving voices to new media outlets that represent millions and millions of Americans. The thing I would add, I've got a two-part question for you. The first is just can you expand upon what steps the White House is going to take to bring more voices?
Not just the Axios guy or the Breitbart guy?
Last, which is what
these are our two best boys here, chat. We got Axios and we got Breitbart.
Our founder Andrew Breitbart believed into this room where they rightly belong.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said in my opening statement, Matt, it is a priority of this White House to honor the First Amendment. And it is a fact that Americans are consuming their news media from various different platforms, especially young people. And as the youngest press secretary in history, thanks to President Trump, I take great pride in opening up this room to new media voices to share the president's...
When is she going to bring the skibbity toilet guy on? Come on, da fuck boom. Make him show up. Make him arrive there. Talk about how he's going to build a skibbity Trump.
Message with as many Americans as possible. In doing so, number one, we will ensure that outlets like yours, Axios and Breitbart, which are widely respected, and
that is Breitbart, says Turtle Matt.
View
Sorry, turtleck. I don't know where I got turtleneck.
Have an actual seat in this room every day. We also, again, encourage anybody in this country, whether you are a TikTok content creator, a blogger, a podcaster, if you are producing legitimate news content, no matter the medium, you will be allowed to apply for press credentials to this White House. And as I said earlier, our new media web.
You make 3D models of toilet people using SourceForge. You can apply.
Site is whitehouse.com/new media. And so we encourage people
Yeah, I think you're right, Roxy.
to apply. Again, as long as you are creating news-related content of the day and you're a legitimate
Well, I mean, I would say that, yeah, it's Skibidi toilet is quite topical.
independent journalist, you're welcome to cover this White House.
Caroline, you said you laid out several of the actions that President Trump has taken. Obviously, it's
Did she say a blogger?
Breakneck speed.
I think you're right, Sisyphean. I heard. Yeah. No, she said blogger, didn't she? TTS for the press room. They need a TTS, don't they?
President Trump. Can we expect that pace to continue as
Oh, chat. Like, we haven't heard it today, but we've got a new TTS. Check it out. If you super chat, you'll hear a brand new voice speak your message.
First 100 days.
DeepSeek version 3 is running a lot faster and a lot more smoothly in the same hardware compared to Llama 2 7B or ChatGPT 3.5 for better outputs. Simone, I must know though. I have to ask you, does it play Minecraft? Can you Minecraft it? Does it have the compute for Minecraft? Or do we need to do more spend?
Moves along here and beyond that.
Absolutely. There's no doubt President Trump has always been the hardest working man in politics. I think that's been proven over the past week. This president has again signed more than 300 executive orders.
That's the work, apparently.
Taken historic action. I gaggled aboard Air Force One to mark the first 100 days of this administration.
That is probably the most work that Donald Trump's ever done in his life, though, just signing those executive orders. Like, in terms of actual shit that guy does, there's not a lot of it. A lot of his business is him saying shit and other people doing shit. And him taking credit for what works and placing blame on what doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't work. Most of the things he's touched turn to shit, including, but not limited to, this country. I could probably make an interface with Minecraft using PyTorch.
4 p.m.
We saw we saw 3 AIs compete to try to be the first to kill the Ender Dragon in Minecraft last night, and it was wild.
Last Friday, our first 100 hours rather, and this president did more in the first 100 hours than the previous president did in the first 100 days. So President Trump, I think you can all expect for him to continue to work at this breakneck speed, so I hope you're all ready to work very hard. I know that we are. Seek Miller.
Thanks, Caroline. A question that we've asked your predecessor.
Yeah, that's right. They buried the Constitution. They deleted it off the internet, so it no longer applies.
Both parties in this job. When you're up here in this briefing room speaking to the American public, do you view yourself and your role
fucking surreal? I don't like it.
As speaking on, advocating on behalf of the president or providing the unvarnished truth that is, not to lie, not to obfuscate.
What is bro doing
to the American people?
Like, what is your mission here, dude? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you a tool of the Trump administration here to give the best possible spin to anything and everything they've done, or will you be a noble human being that gives the unvarnished truth? What kind of shit is that?
I commit to telling the truth from this podium every single day. I commit to speaking on behalf of the President of the United States.
Even if they are alternative facts, yes, I will speak the truth. A version of the truth.
That is my job. And I will say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular.
Wildly popular. Just like me. Turtleck, thank you for the 100 biddies.
With the American people, and that's exactly what this administration is doing. It's correcting the lies and the wrongs of the past 4 years, many of the lies that have been told to your face.
Lady Badash thinks he was simping.
In this very briefing room. I will not do that. But since you brought up Truth Seek, I would like to point out, while I vowed to provide the truth from this podium, we ask that all of you in this room hold yourselves to that same standard. We know for a fact there have been lies that have been pushed by many legacy media outlets in this country about this president.
People are saying it sounds like a character from James Bond. Is that Moneypenny?
About his family, and we will not accept that. We will call you out when we feel that your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House. So yes, I will hold myself to the truth, and I expect everyone in this room to do the same.
And Carol, I just had a substantive question. Yesterday, the White House Office of Management and Budget directed across the board.
Wait, he is a simp. He gets 2 questions. He looks uncomfortable. Does he have a boner?
Freeze with some exceptions for
Is that why she's leaning away from him? She can tell.
Assistance, we understand.
She's like, I don't want to be anywhere near this.
To federal grants. It's caused a lot of confusion around the country among Head Start providers, among providers.
Okay, well, he's asking the important questions: boner or no boner.
Services to homeless veterans, Medicaid providers, states saying they're having trouble accessing the portal. Could you help us clear up some of the confusion, give some certainty to folks? And also, is that uncertainty? How does that uncertainty service the president's voters?
Well, I think there's only uncertainty in this room amongst the media. There's no uncertainty in this building. So let me.
Oh my God! Shut up! Shut the door.
Provide the certainty and the clarity that all of you need. This is not a blanket pause.
Shut the front door. Looks like it's the most uncomfortable and unwanted boner. Like he's confused whether why he's attracted to fascist Barbie. Who is he? Does anybody know this guy?
On federal assistance.
Everybody looks so uncomfortable there. Okay, she's answering the question. I should let her speak.
In this room amongst the media, there's no uncertainty in this building. So let me provide the certainty and the clarity that all of you need. This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. And I want to make that very clear.
He hasn't said anything about Medicare, though. Notice that.
Narwhal_by super chatted $10. She sounds like she's giving a sales pitch on Shark Tank. That's why she creeps us out.
Oh my God. Yeah, she does. She could be on The Apprentice. You know what I mean? Yeah, she's giving like reality show contestant from one of those reality shows where they get like professionals to do presentations. Thank you for the super chat, Narwhal by Nature.
To any Americans who are watching at home.
She said Medicare, right? This is very important because she said if you get it like directly from the government, right? If it's direct assistance, then it won't be impacted. Medicaid goes from the federal government to the states to the individual. So that's not direct assistance. It still seems to be that it seems like that might be. We can rewind it just to make sure.
That includes, I'm not naming everything that's included.
She's also saying she's not naming everything that's included, so it's potential. Yeah, they're still trying to leave themselves. So here's what they're doing. They made a bold power grab and they got kicked in the nuts. So now they're backing off and they're making, they're saying, we're not going after this. We're not going after this. We're not going out. Oh, you thought we were going after this? Ha 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 ha. We would never do that. Right. But they were legitimately going after the whole enchilada. And so now they've backed off. And I think that what they're doing is sort of Medicare. Okay. Very important. 2 different programs. Medicaid is aid to people in need, which might include some of the elderly, right? But to people in need in general, including the Medicaid expansion from Obamacare, under which 72 million Americans get their insurance. Medicare is the program that is given to seniors.
But just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits.
Yeah, so we kind of knew this, right? This is like
food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. And I want to make that very clear to any Americans who are watching at home who may be a little bit confused about some of the media
Well, no, she said Social Security, right? She said that that would not be impacted.
reporting. This administration, if you are receiving individual assistance from the federal government, you will still continue to receive that. However, it is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. That is something that President Trump campaigned on. That's why he has launched DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, who is working alongside OMB. And that's why OMB sent out this memo last night, because the president...
Yeah, I think you're right, Edwin. The food stamps is them backing off.
Signed an executive order directing OMB to do just this. And the reason for this is to ensure that every penny that is going out the door is not conflicting with the executive orders and actions that this president has taken.
So what she's saying is that unlike every other president in history who has funded, as they are mandated to, the functioning of government, including programs that they do not personally agree with or like.
So what does this pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of...
So here's the clue that we have, all right? They're going to use this to go after programs that they can associate with DEI. Programs that they can associate with the with trans people. That's what it sounds like. Their main thrust is here.
Of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our federal bureaucracy and agencies. No more funding for Green New Deal social engineering.
So yeah, that is kind of what I said. It sounds like he's going to use some of this as leverage to get changes that he doesn't have the power to make, but by exerting leverage over people who don't want their budgets cut, he'll be able to get them. I think that sounds like what they're going for here.
Policies. Again, people who are receiving individual assistance, you will continue to receive that. And President Trump is looking out for you by issuing this pause because he is being good steward of your taxpayer dollars.
Thanks, Caroline.
Sure.
How long is this pause going to last, and how is the Trump administration recommending that organizations that rely on federal funding make payroll, pay their rent in the meantime?
It is a temporary pause, and the Office of Management and Budget is reviewing the federal funding that has been going out the door. Again, not for individual assistance, but for all of these other programs that I mentioned. I also spoke with the incoming director of OMB this morning, and he told me to tell all of you that the line to his office is open for other federal government agencies across the board, and if they feel that programs are necessary and in line with the president's agenda, then the Office of Management and Budget will review those policies. I think this is a very...
Like, he's trying to enact a backdoor line item veto. That's what this is. That's not something a president does. That's something that a king does. Yeah, he's using threats to exert more control than he actually does. And to defeat any measure of division, of separation of power. Right, that's what he's going to do. That's the plan.
Very responsible measure. Again, past 4 years, we've seen the Biden administration spend money like drunken sailors. It's a big reason we've had an inflation crisis in this country, and it's incumbent upon this administration to make sure, again, that every penny is being accounted for honestly.
Why impose this pause with so little notice? Why not give organizations more time to plan for the fact that they are about to lose, in some cases, really crucial federal funding, at least for a period of time?
There was notice. It was the executive order that the president signed. There's also a freeze on hiring, as you know, a regulatory freeze, and there's also a freeze on foreign aid. And this is, again, incredibly important to ensure that this administration is taking into consideration how hard the American people are working. And their tax dollars actually matter to this administration. You know, just during this pause, DOGE and OMB have actually found that there was $37 million that was about to go out the door to the World Health Organization, which is an organization, as you all know, that President Trump...
We don't want the World Health Organization. No, hasn't he flip-flopped a few times on this? Canadian Brunch, thank you for the resubscribe. Hello, Irene. Always a pleasure. You too, Canadian Brunch. Good to see you. And thank you for resubscribing.
With the swipe of his pen in that executive order, is no longer wants the United States to be a part of. So that wouldn't be in line with the president's agenda. Doge and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars.
So this doesn't affect Meals on Wheels or Head Start or disaster aid?
Again, it does not affect individual assistance that's going to Americans.
To follow up on Nancy, do you think there will be a list?
They're also acting like you got to pause something in order to study it, in order to look and see if there's waste. You know, it's just it's not a machine that you have to pause and like look at the gears. It's
Of who is affected and how much money is affected? How will these contractors and organizations know?
They want to give you this feeling that there's like money about to leave the door that is like for studying cow pus or something, which actually maybe would be a good. What was the thing that I can't remember? I think it was like Sam Cedar was talking about this morning. Ozempic, right? They got Ozempic from, what was it? It was venom from, was it like lizard venom or something? That they derived Ozempic from studying. You kind of never know what when it comes to research, you never know what studying something might yield to a discovery of something else.
If they are actually having their funding frozen. And then secondly, if you're willing, can you just clarify, is the end goal of this to essentially challenge Congress or to prove that the president can withhold federal funding? In other words, is this an attempt to pick a fight to prove that he can do this?
No, absolutely not. It says right here in the memo, which I have.
It basically is. It's him testing the links of his power.
I encourage all of you to read it. It says the American people elected President Trump to be the president of the United States and gave him a mandate to increase the impact of every federal dollar. This memo requires federal agencies to identify and review all federal financial assistance programs and supporting activities consistent with the president's policies and requirements. The American people gave President Trump an overwhelming mandate on November 5th, and he's just trying to ensure that the tax money going out the door in this very bankrupt city.
This is such a fucking con, the way that she's talking. Oh no, he's just trying to make sure that money going out the door is not, not going to be spent on horse lotion. Oh wait, no, they would like that. They would like the horse paste.
Actually aligns with the will and the priorities of the
They do want to study horse paste. Yeah, that's right.
American people.
Yes. Welcome. You look great. You're doing a great job. You talked about transparency. And some of us in this room know how just transparent President Trump has been.
So what are they trying to do? Stack the press room with sycophants? With people that are going to be like, the liberals think that American people are too stupid to realize.
The last 5 or 6 years, I think you'll do the same. My question is, do you think this latest incident with the president of Colombia is indicative of the global powerful respect they have for President Trump moving forward, not only to engage in
Could I please glaze the president the fuck up?
Economic diplomacy with these countries, but also...
I think that this is a sign of how awesome President Trump is as a negotiator. He got Colombia to give us free coffee.
World peace.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'll echo the answer that the president gave on Air Force One last night when he was asked a very similar...
Is he hitting on her? I mean, this is like the simp press corps. I don't know.
Question by one.
I don't know if they're simping Trump harder or simping her.
Your colleagues in the media. This signifies peace through strength is back. And this president will not tolerate illegal immigration into America's interior. And he expects every nation on this planet, again, to cooperate with the repatriation of their citizens who illegally entered into our country and broke America's laws won't be tolerated. And as you saw, the Colombian government quickly folded and agreed to all of President Trump's demands. Flights are underway once again.
Two questions on deportations, if I may. President Trump had said on the campaign trail that he would deport pro-Hamas students who are here on visas. And on his first day in office, he signed an executive order that said, quote, "The U.S. must ensure that admitted aliens and aliens otherwise already present in the U.S. do not bear hostile attitudes towards the citizens, culture, government, institutions, or founding principles." So should we take this executive order as Trump saying he would be open to deporting those students who are here on visas but, hold pro-Hamas sympathies?
The president is open to deporting individuals who have broken our nation's immigration laws. So if they are here illegally, then certainly he is open to deporting them. And that's what this administration is hard at work at doing. We receive data from DHS and from ICE every single day. From what we hear on the ground, ICE agents are feeling incredibly empowered right now because they actually have a leader in...
They've got Kristi Noem, don't they? Chat, I'm worried for people's dogs. Have you seen the images? Like she's doing like a TV show. Like they're turning this into a television spectacle with Kristi Noem in a like ice vest and Dr. Phil coming along to wag his finger in these people's faces. Don't you know that the American border is sacred and it should not be crossed by a bunch of dirty illegals? I'm Dr. Phil. They're like, I know who you are.
In this building who is supporting them in doing their jobs that they were hired to do.
Destiny Ballwasher, I think the real question is, what does this mean for Tipster's legacy?
Which is to detain, arrest, and deport illegal criminals who have invaded our nation's borders over the past 4 years. That's what the president is committed to seeing. Peter.
Very quickly, just following up on the question on immigration. First, President Trump, during the course of the campaign in 2024, said the following about illegal immigration. He said, "They're going back home where they belong, and we start with the criminals. There are many."
I want to see a newsman do a Trump impression in the middle of quoting Trump. I want to see one of these guys be like...
First, President Trump, during the course of the campaign in 2024, said the following about illegal immigration. He said, "They're going back.
They're going back. They're going back.
Back home where they belong.
Where they belong.
With the criminals. There are many.
Start with the criminals.
NBC
many.
learned that ICE arrested
Hannibal Lecter, folks.
79 undocumented immigrants on Sunday, but
Hannibal Lecter, he said.
Nearly half of them, 560.
You should have to, if you quote him, you got to do an impression.
66 of the migrants.
We want to see your Trump impression, sir.
Appear to have no prior criminal record besides entering the country illegally. Is the president still focused exclusively, which is a civil crime, it's not criminal.
It's a federal crime.
So I'm asking though, he said he was going to focus on those violent offenders first. So is violent offenders no longer the predicate for these people to be deported?
The president has said countless times on the campaign trail.
We're not moving the goalpost. Just let me move the goalpost.
I've been with him at the rallies. I know you've been there covering them too, Peter. That he is focused on launching the largest mass deportation operation in American history of illegal criminals. And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so therefore, you are subject to deportation.
I apologize for interrupting. So to be clear, it's not violent criminals do not receive precedence in terms of the deportations taking place.
The president has also said two things can be true at the same time. We want to deport illegal criminals, illegal immigrants from this country, but the president has said that, of course, the illegal drug...
I mean, KGM, she's just playing, games with us. That's what she's doing. She's playing games with us, right? It's against the federal law. He's like, it's not a criminal offense. And she's like, it's against the federal law, the federal offense. Implying that means, oh shit, that's even worse. That's like, it's like, no, we're talking about a civil offense, as in it's not a crime. It is a civil matter. You go to civil court over it.
Criminal drug dealers, the rapists, the murderers, the individuals who have committed heinous acts on the interior of our country and who have terrorized law-abiding American citizens, absolutely, those should be the priority of ICE, but that doesn't mean that the other illegal criminals who entered our nation's borders are off the table.
Understood. Then let me ask you a separate question about the confusion that still exists across the country right now as it relates to the the freeze or the pause as it's described. President Trump, of course, ran one of the key policy items was that he was going to lower prices, lower the cost of everything from...
What about the eggs?
As he often said. But in many of the cases, it would seem that some of these moves could raise...
What about the eggs, madame?
Prices for real Americans on everything from low-income heating, that program, child care programs. Will nothing that the president's doing here in terms of the freeze in these programs raise prices on ordinary Americans?
What particular actions are you referring to that
I'm
would...
referring to LHEAP right now. That's the low-income heating program, for example. We can talk about... There's no clarity, so I could refer to a lot of them. We don't know what they are specifically. Can you tell us that LHEAP is not one of those affected?
So you're asking a hypothetical based on...
No, he's asking the opposite of a hypothetical. He's talking about a specific program and asking if it's going to be cut. Now that you've walked back some of the cuts that you've attempted, are you going to walk back the low heat, the low income heating fund, or are you going to? Is that going to be something you still try to cut?
Programs that you can't even identify. What I can tell you
just to be
is
clear,
that
since you guys haven't identified, let's do it together, just for Americans at home. Medicaid, is that affected?
I gave you a list of examples: Social
She won't say.
Security, Medicare.
So what that means is that that's still in play. They'll still potentially go for that. They might drop it. They might pretend they were never going for it, but it's still, as of now, on their radar.
Welfare benefits, food stamps that will not be impacted by this federal pause. I can get you the full list after this briefing from the Office of Management and Budget, but I do want to address the cost cutting.
She's like, I don't want to say it on this national press conference. I'm going to be the most transparent press secretary for the most transparent president, and I want to sit up here and tell you the truth, but I don't want the exact programs that are going to be targeted. I don't want that to be part of the press conference. Wow.
Because that's certainly very important, and cutting the cost of living in this country. President Trump has taken historic action over the past week to do that. He actually signed a memorandum to deliver emergency price relief for American families, which took a number of actions. I can walk you through those. He also repealed...
Were they drilling? Oh, I got it, Chad. That's it. His plan to reduce prices for the American people? Drill, baby, drill. There it is. That's literally what he says, though. Like I know Trump language now. When they say reduce prices, reduce cost of living for American citizens, that's what they're talking about drilling.
Many onerous Biden administration regulations. We know over the past 4 years, American households has been essentially taxed $55,000 in regulations from the previous administration. President Trump, with the swipe of his pen, rescinded those, which will ultimately put more money back in the pockets of the American people. So deregulation is a big deal. And then when it comes to energy, I mean, the president signed an executive order to declare a national energy emergency here at...
Deregulation, when what you need is regulations to prevent price gouging. Deregulation and austerity are the opposite of what we need right now. These people are blowing smoke up our collective ass, and I don't appreciate it.
Home, which
my ass already is smoky enough.
Is going to make America energy dominant. We know that energy is one of the #1 drivers of inflation, and so that's why the president wants to increase our energy supply.
That's why energy equals inflation. Energy equals inflation. Say it with me, folks.
Bring down costs for Americans. The Trump energy boom is incoming, and Americans can expect that.
Caroline, thank you.
Caroline, I think some of the confusion may be here with this pause on federal funding. You've made it clear you're not stopping funds that go directly to individuals, but there certainly are lots of organizations that receive funding and then may pass along a benefit. Meals on Wheels, for one. They provide meals for over 2.2 million seniors. What is the president's message to Americans out there, many of whom supported him and voted for him, who are concerned that this is going to impact them directly, even if, as you said, the funding isn't coming directly to their wallet?
I've been asked and answered this question 4 times to individuals at home who receive direct...
I believe if you're getting the same question over and over again, it's probably because you haven't answered the question.
Assistance from the federal government. You will not be impacted by this federal freeze. In fact, OMB just sent out a memo to Capitol Hill with Q&A to clarify some of the questions and the answers that all of you are asking me right now. Again, direct assistance will not be impacted. I've been asked and answered about this OMB memo. There's many other topics of the day. Jackie
But in indirect assistance,
Thank you,
Caroline,
Caroline.
it's going to another organization and then trickling down.
Direct assistance that is in the hands of the American people will not be impacted. Again, as I said to Peter, we will continue to provide that list as it comes to fruition, but OMB right now is focused on analyzing the federal government's spending, which is exactly what the American people elected President Trump to do.
And one question on immigration, Caroline, on immigration. Of the
you, Caroline.
3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
You may have one going from the worst to worst. They all have a criminal record.
And welcome to the
If they broke
I mean, look, this is exactly how they move the goalpost on this issue, on immigration, right? They sell you on the idea, and a lot of people were convinced of this, that the Trump administration was only going after the supposed criminals. Again, may I remind you, the rate of crime for undocumented people in the United States is actually lower than it is for citizens of the United States. So, I mean, it's you know, they're trying to act like there's this whole problem with crime coming from the immigrants. It's not true. It's not a thing. And now because you're getting a lot of these people that are not criminals. You're getting a lot of these people that are not criminals swept up in these raids. And so their excuse now is like, well, they were committing the worst crime of all, crossing the border.
Nation's laws, yes, they are criminal. Yes.
Thank you. On stripping security details for figures like John Bolton, Pompeo, Brian Hook, Senator Tom Cotton said that he's seen the intelligence and the threat from Iran is real for anyone who played a role in the Soleimani strike. He voiced concern it wouldn't just impact those individuals, but potentially their family, innocent bystanders, friends, anyone.
Yeah, wait, who all did he take Secret Service protection off of? Shaxby, thank you for the super chat denial box. It is.
Who's near them when they're out in public. Is the president open to reconsidering his decision?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday, and he was firm in his decision despite some of the comments that you had referenced. And he's made it very clear that he does not believe American taxpayers should fund security details for individuals who have served in the government for the rest of their lives. And there's nothing.
Oh my God. The guy that was saved from having his brains paint the amphitheater that he was speaking in, the guy that was saved by the Secret Service from exactly that happening, that guy wants to make sure that anyone who, like him, had previously served is no longer protected. What the fuck, Trump? If there's one thing that this guy was about, it's about that ear diaper. He's very proud of that ear diaper. That was a very big moment for him, and it's such hypocrisy. It's such hypocrisy for him to cut the secrets, and it's so fucking petty. It's so fucking petty.
Stopping these individuals that
Fauci. That's right, I heard that. Oh my God, Viva. That is.
You mentioned from obtaining private security. That's where the president stands on it. I have no updates on that.
Is there any concern that
But it's not just like that you're taking Secret Service protection off of Fauci. Like, you have painted this guy as if he himself engineered the goddamn virus and spread it, right? The way that right-wing media has painted Fauci is that he created, he created the pandemic, right? It's like they're doing everything that they can to get him hurt then.
this decision might jeopardize the administration's ability to hire the best advisors for these kinds of positions in the future?
No, in fact, I've talked to the Presidential Personnel Office who has told me directly that there is such an influx of resumes for this administration that it's incredibly overwhelming.
Most of them, yeah, we've got 2 resumes this morning. Let's look here. Jink Uger and Anna Kasparian just applied.
No lack of talent for the Trump administration. Reagan,
Would he take any responsibility if anything happened?
We got cat turds application right here. We have libs of TikTok has just applied.
These people, would he feel at all that his decision was a factor in that?
The president was asked an answer
Vinnie Johnson.
yesterday. I defer you to his
Thanks,
comments.
Caroline.
Reagan, since you're in the back row, I hear you. The back row
Milo Yiannopoulos.
hasn't gotten much attention in the last 4 years, so I'm happy to answer your question.
And I can project.
Joe Biden wouldn't answer your questions, but I will.
Does the president intend to permanently cut off funding to NGOs that are bringing illegal foreign nationals to the country, such as Catholic charities?
I am actually quite certain that the president signed an executive order that did just that, and I can point you to that.
One more, Caroline. President Trump issued an executive order on increased vetting for refugees.
George Santos, yes.
Part of that order was considering an outright ban for countries that have deficient screening processes. Has the president considered yet which countries might fall into this category? Are countries like Afghanistan or Syria under consideration for a full ban?
Yeah, so the president signed an executive order to streamline the vetting for visa applicants and for illegal immigrants in this country who are coming, of course, from other nations.
Hulk Hogan.
It also directs
Vince McMahon.
the Secretary of State to review the process and make sure that other countries around the world are being completely transparent with our nation and the individuals that they are sending here. And so the Secretary of State has been directed to report back to the president. I haven't seen that report yet. We've only been...
I wonder how Blair White feels about this. I have not heard much about Blair White, but Brianna Wu, no doubt, blames trans people for this. Brianna Wu, no doubt, will come on your show if you're Piers Morgan and blame the trans agenda for the Democrats' losses.
For a few days.
One on the freeze in federal funding. Who advised the president on the legality of telling government agencies?
That's a damn good question. Wait, I know you.
That they don't have to spend money.
Aaron Burnett. That's a damn good question, Aaron Burnett.
It was already appropriated by Congress.
Well, as the OMB memo states, this is certainly within the confines of the law. So White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it.
Okay, so they disagree with lawmakers who say that they don't have the power to freeze this funding.
Again, I would point you to the language in the memo that clearly states this is within the law.
And all that happened on Friday night, not giving Congress the 30-day legally required notification that they were being fired. I think only 2 were left at DHS and the DOJ. And then yesterday we saw several prosecutors, I believe 12, fired from the Justice Department who were...
Yeah, I mean, these actions that we're describing, whether it be the freeze that we're talking about or the firing of inspectors general, these are illegal acts. These are illegal acts, and he's doing them. Why? Because the Supreme Court told him that he could.
Worked on the investigations into the president. As you know, they are career prosecutors.
Well, Blair White is not on the list for bonus content. However, it looks like Destiny Update with Lonerbox and Pixie is. That's in first place. Emma and the Vanguard in second place. Philosophy Tube in third place, but Philosophy Tube has got the most motion behind it from the donors. Yeah, it looks like Philosophy Tube is ahead right now. We'll see what we end up with. Make sure to vote if you haven't voted already. You can vote whether you're watching me on Twitch. You can come over from YouTube Shorts if you want to. This is on the full screen stream, so just click on that if you want to. Place your vote and make sure to leave a like, because that does help me out a lot, and I do appreciate it greatly. And when you donate, let me know in the chat which of these topics, yes, these ones right up there, which of these topics you want to see as the bonus content. I will, if we get to, we're at 50% right now, so we're halfway there. Much like living on a prayer, we can make it. I swear, it's possible.
Therefore, they are afforded civil service protections. How is the administration deciding which laws to follow and which ones to ignore?
So it is the belief of this White House and the White House counsel's office that the president was...
I am disconcerted by the 2 different audio environments that I'm getting in this clipping together of like one tape with another.
Within his
slight time distortion.
Authority to do that. He is the executive of the executive branch.
It's just the liminal presidency, chat. I don't like it.
And therefore, he has the power to fire anyone within the executive.
Davy Cliff super chatted $9.99.
Davy Cliff coming in for What If Alt Hist. Thank you for the super chat.
Branch that he wishes to. There's also a case that went before the Supreme Court in 2020, Scala Law LLC versus the Customs, Bureau Protection. I would advise you to look at that case, and that's the legality that this White House is resting
So
on.
you're confident that if they bring lawsuits against you, those prosecutors who were fired, that they will succeed?
We will win in court.
And
yes.
did he personally direct this, given they worked on the classified documents investigation and the election interference investigation?
Yeah, do you think that maybe she's got like some Joker DNA in her, like that she's related to the Joker? I shouldn't laugh. I'm not trying to make fun of her. I actually think Erin Burnett looks great. I am not making fun of her looks. I think, but it's like it does give her like a edge. You know what I mean? When she's always got that lip curl, it always looks like she's like, I know more than you know. I know something you don't know.
This was a memo that went out by the president.
The thing is, I have a bad impression of her because I remember her covering Occupy and just being like, the protesters don't have any demands. They don't know what they want. It turns out that capitalism is a lot more important than you thought, isn't it?
Presidential Personnel Office, and the president is the leader of this White House. So yes.
I feel, we need an Erin Burnett, like, impersonator.
Caroline?
Sure.
Thank you. Congrats on your first day behind the podium.
Thank you.
President Trump ended funding for UNRWA and also designated the Houthis a foreign terrorist organization.
That's right.
Both were decisions that the previous administration had reversed. So here's my question. Will there be an investigation into who gave the previous administration this terrible advice?
Well, that's a very good point.
We're going to investigate everyone we fucking can. Just write their name down on the list. Trump will put it in his death note, bestie.
Discussions about such an investigation, but it wouldn't be a bad idea considering that the Houthis certainly are terrorists. They have launched attacks on U.S. naval ships across this
You know who else are terrorists, chat?
world, and so I think it was a very wise move by this administration to redesignate them as a terrorist group, because they are, and I think it was a foolish decision by the previous administration to do so. As for an investigation, I'm not sure about that, but it's not a bad idea.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Can you give us an update on the president's plan for his tariff agenda? He spoke a lot about this yesterday, and there's a couple of dates coming up that he's spoken to. Number one, February 1st, he's alluded to both the potential for tariffs for Canada and Mexico, but also China to take effect on those days.
From what I've heard, he's backed off the tariffs to China. He says he's already enacted tariffs on China.
But now
and
they're a freaking communist invading.
there were some fairly specific tariffs, but not the kind of like wide swath tariffs that are going to go on with Canada and Mexico. Probably because he wants something from them.
What's he thinking about that?
Yeah.
Should those countries expect that?
He just that's his strategy. I will declare tariffs against you unless you do what I want. I will cut FEMA money from you unless you do what I want.
Asked and answered this question this past weekend when he took a lot of questions from the press, and he said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds.
What about the China 10% tariff that he also had mused about last Tuesday going into effect on the same day?
Yep, the president has said that he is very much still considering that for February 1st.
Separately, yesterday he talked also about sectoral tariffs on, for instance, pharmaceuticals as well as semiconductor computers.
So now that is a policy that has been implemented, that could be implemented, that's not as ridiculous and self-harming as his the tariffs that he's talking about.
Chips, he talked about steel, aluminum, and copper. What's the timeline on those?
But still, every time Trump has tried to engage in a trade war, he's lost. It hasn't gone well.
Is that a similar sort of coming days thing?
Yeah, so when the president talked about that in his speech yesterday, it actually wasn't a new announcement. That was within a presidential memorandum that he signed in one of the first days here in the White House on his America First trade agenda. So there's more details on that.
Looks like we're getting Alberta. I mean, it is the Texas of Canada.
Those tariffs in there. As far as a date,
would they have to compete for Joe Rogan's love?
I don't have a specific date.
Does that mean Calgary is like Austin?
out to you, but the president is committed to implementing tariffs effectively, just like he did in his first term.
Finally, he also was asked on the plane when he gaggled about the potential for a universal tariff. He was asked maybe about 2.5%.
A universal tariff. Oh my
There was a
God.
report about that. He said he wanted much bigger than that. Should we understand that these tariffs would add up? You know, in other words, you might have country-specific tariffs like Canada, Mexico, China. You might have sectoral tariffs like on pharmaceuticals, as well as a potential universal tariff on top of that. Do these stack on one or the other, or would one sort of take precedence over another?
All I can point you to is what the president has said on this front. The February 1st date for Canada and Mexico, also the China tariff that he has discussed. He rejected the 2.5% tariff. He said that was a little bit too low. He wants it to be higher. I'll leave it to him to make
Oh, fuck.
decisions on that front.
Do you have any comment on what the Mexicans and Canadians have done so far? Do you have any comment on whether that has met the bar of what he wants to see on fentanyl? Thank you.
I won't get ahead of the president again on advocating to foreign nations on what they should or shouldn't do to get away from these tariffs. The president has made it very clear, again, that he expects every
Where did the Alberta thing come from? Is Alberta, like, has there been movement in Alberta?
nation around this world to cooperate with the repatriation of their citizens. And the president has also put out specific statements in terms of Canada and Mexico when it comes to what he expects in terms of border security. We have seen a historic level of cooperation from Mexico, but again, as far as I'm still tracking, and that was last night talking to the president directly, February 1st is still on the books. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline. Quick programming note and then a question on taxes. Well, in terms of programming, should we expect to see you here every day? How frequently will these press briefings be?
Simp. Can I see you again? Can I see you every day?
It is a good question, April. So look, the president, as you know, is incredibly accessible. First day here, he wanted
So am I.
all of you in the Oval Office. You got a 60-minute press conference with the leader of the free world while he was simultaneously signing executive orders. I may add that's pretty impressive. I don't think the previous office holder would be able to pull such a thing off. So look, the president is the best spokesperson that this White House has, and I can assure you that you will be hearing from both him and me as much as possible.
And then a question about tax cuts. The president has promised to extend the tax cuts from the previous term.
We need those tax cuts. When are we getting the tax cuts?
I'm curious, does the president support corresponding spending cuts as some Republicans have called for in Congress? And will the new Treasury Secretary be leading those negotiations with the Hill as Mnuchin did during the first administration?
The president committed to both tax cuts and spending cuts, and he has a great team negotiating on his behalf, but there's no better negotiator than Donald Trump, and I'm sure he'll be involved in this reconciliation process as it moves forward.
Caroline, in the announcement that you made last night on the Iron Dome, it said the president had directed that the United States will build this Iron Dome.
Yeah.
When you read into the executive order, it seemed short of that. It asked for a series of studies and reports back from him. Can you tell us whether the president has directed this? And if he is as concerned on this issue, why the suspensions that we saw listed by OMB included so many different nuclear programs, non-proliferation programs, programs to blend down nuclear weapons, and
Beamer, tariffs can be useful when they have a specific purpose. A great example of this is that if there's a burgeoning industry in your country that you'd like to support, you might want to put tariffs on those products to give it a chance to come up, right? But when you use them, like Trump uses them, as a pissing contest, very often you get into a trade war, which is either harmful to all parties and helpful to none, or in Trump's case, he's lost trade wars. He's gotten into trade wars with countries that actually have an advantage, and it's been to the detriment of the United States. If, for instance, maybe part of what you're concerned about is prices, you don't want tariffs. Tariffs will very likely increase prices. You've got to ask yourself, is what you're wanting to accomplish with the tariff worth it? And in the case of Trump, it's not. It's leverage. It's a pissing contest. It's him trying to exert his dominance over people. It's just him being a dick. And that's not how they're used, right? That's how you
and so forth?
First of all, when it comes to the Iron Dome, the executive order directed the
how you lose.
implementation of an Iron Dome. It also, as you said, kind of directed research and studies to see if or how the United States can go about doing this, particularly the Department of Defense. When it comes to the other question that you asked about those specific programs, again, I would say this is not a ban. This is a temporary.
Yeah, higher coffee prices would have probably stemmed from a trade war that, like the one that he was trying to start with Colombia.
Pause and a freeze to
among other things. I feel like Colombia is actually a pretty big trading partner.
ensure that all of the money going out from Washington, D.C. is in line with the president's agenda. And as the Office of Management and Budget has updates on what will be kickstarted once again, I will provide those to you.
Yeah, exactly, coolest dude. Look, the only person that wins in a pissing contest is the one that... I should come up with a different metaphor, shouldn't I? You get into a pissing contest, best case scenario, you still get pissed on. Stupid.
Just clarify for a sec what you were saying before on Medicaid. It wasn't clear to me whether you were saying that
She is,
no Medicaid would be...
I mean, is it not clear to him that she is being purposefully like opaque about this? I mean, that's what I got from it. She said she'll share a list after the press conference, but she's specifically doing that so that she doesn't end up saying the truth in the press conference, which is probably that Medicaid is still under the crosshairs.
Cut off. Obviously, a lot of this goes to states before it goes to individuals and so forth. So are you guaranteeing here that no individual now on Medicaid would see a cutoff because of the pause?
I'll check back on that and get back to you. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. As you know, in the first week that the president was in office, signed an executive order as it relates to birthright citizenship, trying to eliminate that. Now, 22 state attorney generals have said that this is unconstitutional. A federal judge has just agreed with their argument. What's the administration's argument for doing away with birthright citizenship?
The folks that you mentioned have a right to have that legal opinion, but it is in disagreement with the legal opinion of this administration. This administration believes that birthright citizenship is unconstitutional, and that is why President Trump signed that executive order. Illegal immigrants who come to this
This administration believes that something that's literally in the Constitution is unconstitutional.
country and have a child are not subject to the laws of this jurisdiction. That's the opinion of this administration. We have already appealed the lawsuit that was filed against this administration, and we are prepared to fight.
Look, at some point, the American citizens are going to figure out that their enemy is not the immigrant, is not the homeless person. It is, in fact, the billionaire. It is, in fact, the boss. But it might be too late by that time. It might be too late.
This all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to, because President Trump believes that this is a necessary step to secure our nation's borders and protect our homeland.
On foreign policy, Caroline, on foreign policy, if I may, the president's commitment to the NATO Defense Alliance, is it as strong as the prior administration? Is it the same as when he served as president in his first term in office?
As long as NATO pays their fair share, and President Trump has called on NATO allies to increase their defense spending to 5%. You actually saw the head of NATO at Davos last week on Bloomberg television saying that President Trump is right, and if Europe wants to keep itself safe, they should increase their defense spending. I would just add that there was no greater ally to our European allies than President Trump in his first term. The world for all nations in Europe and of course here at home was much safer because of President Trump's peace through strength diplomatic approach. Monica.
Thank you, Caroline, and it's great to finally be called on as well in the briefing room. I appreciate that. Of course, we know President Trump just got back from North Carolina and California meeting with victims of natural disasters. There's the 2-year anniversary of the East Palestine, Ohio toxic train derailment. Does the president have any plans to go visit the victims of that toxic spill or just visit in general?
No plans that I...
The original toxic gossip train.
Out for you here. If that changes, I will certainly keep you posted. What I can tell you is that President Trump still talks about his visit to East Palestine, Ohio. That was one of the turning points, I would say, in the previous election campaign, where Americans were reminded that President Trump is a man of the people, and he, as a candidate, visited that town that was just derailed by the train derailment, no pun intended.
No pun intended. No pun there. You just used the same word twice. That's just inartful. It's not a joke.
And he offered support.
Not a pun. Not even a pun.
Just like I saw the president do this past week. It was a purposeful decision by this president on his first domestic trip to go to North Carolina and to California to visit with Americans who were impacted by Hurricane Helene and also by the deadly fires. A red state and a blue state, both of which feel forgotten.
And one of which you are fucking holding the relief money over their head to try to change their voting laws.
By the previous administration and the federal government. That is now ended under President Trump. He will continue to put Americans first, whether they're in East Palestine, in Pacific Palisades, or in North Carolina.
Thank you, Caroline. On California, could you please clarify what the military did with the water last night as referenced in the president's Truth Social post?
The water has been turned back on in California, and this comes just days after President Trump visited Pacific Palisades. And as you all...
The water has been turned back on as if there was like a crank somewhere that turns on the water from Northern California, which then flows down as if by gravity to Southern California magically. And it just needed to be turned on. And for some reason, Newsom wouldn't do it. And Karen Bass didn't want the water. She doesn't like water. She's anti-water.
Saw applied to...
Look, the problem with California is what percent? Is it like 95% of their water is like privately owned? That's the problem, is that billionaires fucking own the water.
Tremendous pressure on state and local officials in Pacific Palisades, including Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, to turn on the water and to direct that water to places in the south and in the middle of the state that have been incredibly dry.
She's in the south. I love the idea that she just didn't want the water. She was like, no, keep the water up there. I don't like water.
Which has led to the expansion, the rapid expansion of these fires.
So could you clarify what the military's role was, where the water came from, and how it got there?
Again, the Army Corps of Engineers has been on the ground in California to respond to the devastation from these wildfires. And I would point out that just days after President Trump visited the devastation from these fires, the water was turned on. That is because of the pressure campaign he put on state and local officials there who clearly lack all common sense. And I will never forget being at that roundtable with the president last week and hearing the frustration in the voices of Pacific Palisades residents who feel as though their government has just gone insane. Before President Trump...
They're like, yeah, just turn on the water. Why won't they turn on the water? They won't turn on the water.
Up on the scene, Karen Bass was telling private property owners that they would have to wait 18 months to access their private property. So this administration, the president and his team that's on the ground in California, Rick Grinnell, who he has...
Look, they're going to, anytime that there is a natural disaster in a blue state or a blue city, they're going to weaponize it. Every single time, right? Mark my words. When you see something like that happen and there's a Democratic or, unfriendly to Trump, like I'd make some exceptions. I feel like Trump likes Mayor Adams of New York City. Maybe there's a few Democrats Trump is okay with, but for the most part, right, when this happens in a blue region, they are going to blame the natural disaster on the government. When this happens on a red region, they are going to, trip over their themselves to get aid to that area. That's the new meta. That's the new meta. Politicize every single natural disaster.
To oversee this great crisis, it will continue to put pressure on Karen Bass and state and local officials to allow residents to access their properties. This is a huge part of it. These residents want to take part in their own clearing out of their properties. They should be able to do that. It's the United States of America. What happened to our...
It's just like Free the Squirrel. Why did they come by and they got the squirrel? Kathy Hochul, why did you... Do you remember... What was the squirrel's name? Does anybody remember? What was this? Do you remember the squirrel? It was at that squirrel won Trump the election, by the way. Some TikTok channel had a squirrel and a raccoon, I believe, and they had somebody that saw it on TikTok like called the animal authorities on them because these were animals that I guess you're not supposed to keep. And so they came to look at the animals and they got bit by the squirrel, and they had to dissect the squirrel to make sure it didn't have rabies, right? And they got on this. They were like, Trump wouldn't have killed the squirrel. Kathy Hochul killed the squirrel because of wokeness. Because of wokeness. There was DEI at animal control, and they killed the squirrel.
Freedom. Clearly, it's gone in California, but not anymore.
What was anybody remember the squirrel? Peanut, thank you, Lady Badash. I am glad somebody remembers. It's Peanut, the squirrel.
President Trump.
April. Caroline, welcome to the briefing room.
Thank you.
Several questions. One on the pause. Would
you turn it into this like simple little thing, like, you know, save Peanut the squirrel, turn on the water, and people are like, yeah, why don't they turn on the water? I think they should turn on the water. Is that all we need? Do we need them to turn on the water? Would everything be good if we turned on the water? Why won't they turn on the water?
Serving
Why won't they let people go back to their neighborhoods?
It was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
Well, I want the thing that wokeness is killing squirrels and also eating the dogs and the cats. I know, right? Only Trump can save the animals.
Institutions, preferably colleges and universities, have those monies held back temporarily at this moment?
Again, I have not seen the entire list because this memo was just sent out. So I will provide you all with updates as we receive them, okay?
In other words, I don't want this to be part of the press conference.
Also, secondly,
she's nervous, right? Because, like, I mean, this is the question is, does the list of shit that they're actually targeting, does that make the press conference, or does that not make the press conference? And she would prefer it not. Like, it can go out, it'll be reported, but it won't have a clip. It won't have a video clip with the press secretary attached to it, so it won't have as much reach. They are playing the social media game right now.
When it comes to immigration, there is this southern border focus. What happens to those who've overstayed their visas? That is part of the broken immigration system. In 2023, there was a report by the Biden administration, the Homeland Security Department, that said overstays of visas were 3 times more than usual. Okay. Will there be a focus on the overstays for visas as well?
If an individual is overstaying their visa, they are therefore an illegal immigrant residing in this country, and they are subject to deportation.
And also, lastly, as we're dealing with anti-DEI, anti-woke efforts, we understand this administration is thinking about celebrating Black History Month. Have you got any word on that? Anything that you can offer to us?
As far as I know, this White House certainly still intends to celebrate.
Unless I get the word that we don't, unless we decide that Black History Month is woke.
Continue to celebrate America.
Unless they try to go for Black History Month the way they went for Pride last year. Unless that becomes the new target. Yeah, for now we're still on board, but
history and the contributions that
like she has to put that caveat. Do you notice that? It's not just like, well, of course, yeah, no, we're doing that. Yeah, Black History Month. No, we're gonna, yeah, no, of course. Why would we not? Right? It's not that. That's not what she's saying. She's like, as far as I know, it's somewhere in her mind. She's like, I don't know. Maybe that's woke next week. Maybe that's considered woke.
All Americans, regardless of race, religion, or creed, have made to our great country, and America is back. Christian Dayton.
Thanks, Caroline. Just real quick, you mentioned the inflation executive order the president signed, but egg prices have skyrocketed since President Trump took off.
Yeah, somebody's asking about the eggs. There we go.
So what specifically is he doing to lower those costs for America?
What is he doing to make the eggs better?
Really glad you brought this up, because there is a lot.
Is he in there shining those eggs up against a light? Hitting them with a hammer, testing them out?
A lot of reporting out there that is putting the onus on this White House for the increased cost of eggs. I would like to point
out... Are you saying that the price rising during a certain administration does not necessarily indicate the policies of that administration? It might, in fact, be a lagging indicator, or it might just be subject to a lot of different market forces that do not have to do with. Now here we go. Before it was like definitely egg prices high, Biden and White House, Biden's fault, right? But now it's kind of like, no, you think that that's our fault? That's obviously Biden still do it. He's still jamming the egg prices higher. He's sending in the weasels, chat. He's sending the weasels in, and the weasels are eating the eggs, and it's making the eggs more expensive. Biden's still there, and he's all like, weasel, 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 weasel. I'm sending the weasels, Jack. They got hairy legs.
Out to each and every one of you that in 2024, when Joe Biden was in the Oval Office or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure, egg prices increased.
Ha ha ha, it was because he was sleeping. He should have been making the eggs cheaper.
65% in this country. We also have seen the cost of everything, not just eggs. Bacon, groceries, gasoline have increased because of the inflationary policies of the last administration. As far as the egg shortage, what's also contributing to that is that the Biden administration and the Department of Agriculture directed the mass killing of more than 100 million chickens
that were infected with the bird flu? Oh my God, how dare they? That's right, in this White House, we don't believe in germ theory.
Which has led to a lack of chicken supply in this country, therefore a lack of egg supply.
We are a homeopathic administration, and we know that only like can cure like.
Which is leading to the shortage. So I will leave you with this point. This is an example of why it's so incredibly important that the Senate moves swiftly to confirm all of President Trump's nominees, including his nominee for the United States Department of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, who is already speaking with Kevin Hassett, who is leading the economic team here at the White House, on how we can address the egg shortage in this country. As for costs, I laid out the plethora of ways that President Trump has addressed saving costs for the American people over the past week.
And it's three things, right? Drill, baby, and drill. That's how we're gonna make inflation be good. If we drill, baby, drill.
But now there are
everything
communist invading radicals.
Peachy when we drill, baby, drill.
Looks forward to continuing doing that in the days ahead.
Are Medicaid portals down in all?
Did she call it a Oh yeah, the regulation being that you don't serve chickens that are infected. Wow, what a fucking onerous regulation on our job creators in the agriculture industry. They should be able to sell us those infected chickens. All right, that is the press conference, the first of many press conferences. We'll see how long this press secretary lasts. Some of them don't last that long. Others stick around for a year or two. We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, chat, it behooves me to let you know that we're at 60% towards our dono goal. If we hit that dono goal, it's only 40% more. I'll stick around a little longer and I'll cover another topic. Right now, it looks like the topic that is winning is the new philosophy tube / Innuendo Studios. Yeah, seems to be in first place with update on Lonerbox and Pixie in second place. Remember, you can affect that by voting. If you haven't voted already, 129 of you have voted so far. Feel free to come over to the YouTube full-scale stream if you're on the short stream, or if you're on Twitch and vote. Make sure to leave a like while you're there, though. It helps me out a lot, and I appreciate it greatly. And also know that if you donate, you can let me know in the chat which of these topics you want to see as your bonus content. If we hit that bonus, I'll actually, turn your donation into a percentage, which I will add to the topic of your choice. That's where the boost comes from. That's why Philosophy Tube has that 25% boost on it. So just know that you can do that whatever form of donation you choose, whether it's super chat, super sticker, whether you get yourself a membership, whether you gift a membership, whether you contribute to my Throne account, which is that URL right there, or you sign up for my Patreon or over on Twitch, which I appreciate. Those of you who choose to support me on Twitch, because again, there's a campaign to get political streamers demonetized, and they were going for Hassan. They didn't really hurt Hassan. They hurt us instead. So those of you who support me on Twitch, that's the only way I make any money on Twitch. So thank you kindly for doing that. We should check out Tim Waltz and see what he is doing. Somebody asked me about this earlier. I was like, oh yeah, we're about to get to Tim Waltz. I didn't realize it would take me so long to react to the Trump administration's first press conference, but we get to Tim Walz, we shall. Let's see what he's up to.
Donald Trump's reckless action cut off funding to law enforcement, farmers, schools, childcare, veterans, and healthcare. While he was out golfing, he threw the country into crisis. This is not bold. It's not leadership. It's stupid, buffoonish, childish of exactly what they did. Childcare providers across the state, law enforcement, our prisons, things that we count on. Individuals on Medicare, things that we know matter to people's lives. I understand that the people voted, and Kamala Harris and I lost an election to Donald Trump. 77 million people voted for him. That's 23% of the population. That is not a mandate to squash the Constitution. It's not a mandate to break the law. It's not a mandate to throw out all...
It's not a mandate. It's a low percentage victory.
All of the things that we know make this country works well. I will work with this administration where we work with them and where they're lawful and it's in the interest. But
the thing is, like half of Donald Trump's power is like a psychological power. He can intimidate people into things. He can deceive people about things. He can con people into doing things, right? And what sucks is that, like, the U.S. and the Democratic Party especially, they're vulnerable to that kind of psychological warfare. They are getting intimidated by a 1.5% popular vote margin. That is fucked. All right, so let's take a look. This is the
Just within the last 2 hours, a Washington, D.C. judge has blocked President Trump's freeze on...
So there we have the case from the state's attorneys general blocking temporarily, putting an injunction on the freeze that Trump attempted to enact, is currently trying to walk back because it's not as popular as he thought it might be.
On federal funding, the Trump administration ordering a freeze on all grants and loans that would have gone into effect this afternoon. It would also have paused access to billions, if not trillions of dollars that support public programs in the U.S. The White House argues it is an effort to review where federal funding is going. Democrats, though, argue the move is unconstitutional.
I guess we'll never know. It's not like we, the news media, can do research ourselves and decide which of these narratives is most true. We've got to just, I don't know.
Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution essentially grants Congress the so-called power of the purse, or control over government spending. Today, more than 24 attorneys general, including Washington,
woke gender ideology,
announced plans to sue the Trump administration over that freeze. California's attorney general also said the funding freeze memorandum was ambiguous in its wording by design.
I have a feeling, chat, that we have not seen the depths of Trump's unpopularity. Now, granted, at various times in his last administration, he was very unpopular. Throughout the beginning of the Biden administration, he was very unpopular. I have a feeling that during this administration, we are going to see some record disapproval ratings for Donald Trump. If this is how he's starting it out, he might be the most hated person in America by the end of this whole thing. Okay, so we had the House Democrats. Oh no, chat. You want to see the House Democrats? Here's another
Tonight, those affected by President Trump's federal...
Oh my God, stop. Oh.
A stark warning from...
We do need to watch the RFK thing too, don't we?
Tonight, those affected by President Trump's federal funding freeze have a little longer to clear up confusion over the order. A federal judge has temporarily halted it. Earlier today, top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer sharply criticized the action.
This decision is lawless.
He sent a strongly worded letter. Oh, it's over, chat. Chuck Schumer harshly criticized. Pack it up, Trump. Your administration is over. Chuck Schumer has harshly criticized your administration. Gonna go ahead and vote for the final Rudyard part, considering it's what brought me here in the first place. Something great out of something icky. Hey, that's what we'll go for. Thank you for the super chat, Ziggy, and I will put your money where your mouth is. adding this to What If Alt Hist, his Requiem.
It's destructive, it's dangerous, it's cruel, it's illegal, and it's unconstitutional. Donald Trump has done a lot of bad things in the last week.
He needs to be spanked.
But nothing's worse than this.
Let's bring in two.
Oh, I feel so much better, chat. I feel so defended by that guy. Yeah, he's got us. He's got our back.
Reporters who know a little bit about all this to discuss it a little more. Nancy Cook, a senior national political correspondent for Bloomberg News, and Julie Grace Brufke is a senior political correspondent for the Daily Beast, joining us from Doral, Florida, where House Republicans are meeting behind occasionally opened but mostly closed doors about the future as they prepare for some big legislation later this year.
Coolest dude, I hate to break it to you, but that's like every election. That's like every election that the Democrats lose. Yeah, they illegally remove people from voter rolls. Republicans do. I mean, like, look, if you wanted to take everything into account, no, it's not a fair race. There's gerrymandering. There's all kinds of shenanigans, including, taking, the whole thing, why do you think Republicans want voter ID? In general, the least amount of people voting is going to be better for Republicans. And when they can figure out a way to take preferentially Democratic voters off the rolls, which they often do through essentially policies that target people based on their race. That is one effective thing, strategy that the Republicans have used. But yeah, what's his name? Greg Palast is making the rounds again.
Earlier today at the White House, the new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, defended this federal aid freeze. Let's take a listen.
But it sucks. No, it's not a fair election. Not by a long shot. They don't want a fair election.
What she had to say.
I think this is a very responsible measure. Again, the past 4 years, we've seen the Biden administration spend money like drunken sailors. It's a big reason we've had an inflation crisis in this country. And it's incumbent upon this administration to make sure, again, that every penny is being accounted for.
I mean, if you wanted to look at the debt, you wanted to look at the deficit, right? You would see it spike with Trump. You would see it come down with Biden. If Biden spent money like a drunken sailor, then what the fuck do you call the Trump administration? And look, in some cases, right, some of that deficit I would call money well spent, right? The deficit that to the extent that putting money in the pockets of Americans and extending unemployment, to the extent that put a dent in the deficit, like that was money well spent. Oh, you're changing to Vox Populi. Okay.
Or honestly.
Based on the whims of the chat, nonetheless. Thank you for the super chat, Ziggy.
I get the drunken sailor spending bit, but Julie Grace, you're there with all of them in Florida. Is there sufficient support for what they pulled today among congressional Republicans?
Well, I've spoken to a number of lawmakers today, and there still seems to be some confusion to the scope of what it's going to affect. And there's definitely some concerns among moderates about what it would do to programs like Medicaid, rural school programs, senior programs. So there are a lot of lawmakers that kind of want answers, but also feel like there need to be spending cuts. So while many of them are optimistic, there are still a lot of questions that they would like answered at this point.
I imagine they can sit there and go, these ads write themselves. If you're withholding funding for Meals on Wheels or for school lunch programs or things like that, I mean, there's got to be a real scare among some of them. Does that have the potential to force the president, the White House, to pull back and change course?
Well, I think that they just didn't have a ton of answers about all of the programs affected. And we saw that in the first White House briefing.
Okay, here we go. That's a failure. That's a failure to understand what's actually to tell the American people what's going on. That is reporting the spin that the Trump administration gave you rather than the truth which you can see with your eyes. She is just basically saying, "Oh yeah, no, that's what the press secretary said. I guess that must be the truth." How else are we going to know the truth but to ask the press secretary? Because we know the press secretary always tells the truth about the administration.
Today by Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, she kept emphasizing that benefits that go directly to people like Medicare and Social Security aren't affected.
Oh, towards Rudyard, says Narwhal by Nature?
But there's a ton of benefits that do flow through states like Medicaid or through nonprofits that then flow to people like Meals on Wheels. And there's just a real lack of clarity about sort of how the sweep of this federal funding freeze and what it actually looks like.
Julie Grace, you are, as we said, in Doral. They're holding these meetings at Trump Doral, which has a handful of golf courses and a club or two, and certainly enough conference space for all of the House Republicans. What has been on their agenda? What's the purpose of these meetings, and what are we expecting them to come back to Washington having discussed?
No, so today they met with J.D. Vance, who kind of called for all of them to unify together, and particularly with this reconciliation bill coming up. So they're kind of trying to.
Oh my God, chat! What if all HIST is ahead by one?
Hash out what they could get in there as they look to extend the Trump tax cuts, roll back regulations on energy, deal with border legislation, all of this one bill that they're kind of looking to put together here. That being said, there's some moderates that are kind of temping down expectations, saying they don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but they're hoping to be able to get some things done. But there are still some disagreements with the Freedom Caucus on things like how to handle the debt ceiling and some other critical things that they need to tackle there as part of their agenda.
One of those critical things is so-called state and local taxes, or SALT, as it's known to those of us from the Northeast. And there's been a lot of focus on that, Nancy, as House Republicans try to reach this compromise on cutting spending, but also maybe restoring some tax credits for people.
So they're not going to explain this, but I think what they're talking about is whether you pay your federal taxes, whether you get to take your state and local out first, right? And essentially, state and local taxes are high, like it's more important if you live in a state that has higher taxes, right? If you live in a state that doesn't have taxes, or there's minimal local taxes, this affects you less. If you live in a state where taxes are high, it affects you more.
Who pay higher property taxes. To what extent do we think this was coming up in Florida and potentially muddies their ability to reach some kind of a compromise?
I'm sure it was coming up in Florida, and it came up last week. We saw one of the most vocal proponents of sort of making SALT more generous again, Representative Lawler. He visited the White House last week. The thing you have to remember is the margins among the House Republicans are so slim that if they're going to do something like a tax bill, they can't afford to have sort of 5 to 10 members from high-cost states like California, New Jersey, New York, where this is an issue. They can't afford to have those people not support the bill. And so they're going to have to, make amends and sort of compromise with them.
Cut the Pentagon's budget? I dare you, Elon. Let's get Jink on it. I'm sure he'll make it happen.
This is just one of the opening salvos that they have to deal with the tax bill. Sort of how much can people deduct from their state and local taxes? And again, this is an issue in these high-cost states where many donors live.
Over in the Senate, throughout the rest of this week, there's going to be a lot of focus on some key confirmation hearings for top Trump choices. Julie Grace, there's apparently still big doubts about Tulsi Gabbard's chances. What have you heard?
So yeah, when I was talking earlier about this best strategy for those opposing Trump, this is part of it, right? Part of what I came up with was triage. As in, there are some of these nominations, they're just going to go through. And it's almost like the more that they have like a Matt Gaetz moment where they're forced to eat crow, where they're forced to, block a nomination. And this might also happen with Tulsi Gabbard. The easier it's going to be for them to get through the other monster nominees like Hegseth. Now, Hegseth did only go through by one vote, right? And I wish I could tell you it was a Republican vote. It wasn't. It was John Fetterman. John Fetterman had Hegseth's back. That's of all the shit. He's just anything to own the libs, right, Fetterman?
Absolutely. I mean, we heard Susan Collins come out this week, and she has a lot of concerns about whether she's actually changed her position on FISA. There are a lot of concerns. I've spoken with Republicans about her past kind of relationship and positive comments about Assad. And I think those are all things that we're kind of going to.
But yeah, in terms of nominations that might get scuttled, Tulsi is one of the top contenders for that.
Emerged in recent days, and the House Intel Committee, she can't lose any Republican votes, so she's really going to have to sway some minds with some critics on that panel. So I think of all the nominees right now, she might have the toughest climb of actually being confirmed.
Well, if not her, it's Robert F. Kennedy, who today drew some
really
direct, outspoken criticism from his cousin, Caroline Kennedy, who spoke out in this video that emerged on social media. Take a look.
Overseeing the FDA, the NIH, the CDC.
Now, chat, remind me, if you will, where do I remember Caroline Kennedy from? Anybody, any guesses out there? I remember Caroline Kennedy being in the news not so long ago, but I can't remember what it was for. I feel like she was going to run for something and she lost really badly. Is that what it was? Or she was nominated for something? I can't remember.
And Centers for Medicare Services, agencies that are charged with protecting the most vulnerable among us, is an enormous responsibility and one that Bobby is unqualified to fill. I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together.
Yeah, that's just like a thing with Trump's cabinet, is that you've got now two members with family members making allegations against them, having gone on record saying that they were up to no good, saying that they were predators. Actually, this is what it... Well, shit, I'm spoiling it for you, chat.
It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets.
Here we go.
Because Bobby himself is a predator.
And she goes into great...
And we'll look into more of that. That's actually kind of interesting.
Detail in this letter that she sent to members of the House or the Senate Finance and Health Committees about, you know, things that he did back in the day when he was younger. Literally, she claims grinding up baby chickens and whatnot to feed to his hawks.
I mean, look, that's probably what you're gonna do if you keep hawks. Okay. And yeah, like it is bad that he is a predator to people, which is what she's saying. I feel like the Hawks thing should be like, I don't know, she's just mentioning all this stuff about him, but what she's talking about, in addition to like what he's done to childcare employees that he had working at his house allegedly, and other allegations against him, is that he was like, his place was party central for like a lot of his relatives. Like, she's blaming him, actually, you know, his lifestyle of partying, that he, you know, maybe I don't know when he stopped, like when he was 40 or something, but he was supposedly dragging down other members of the Kennedy family along with him, like getting them into addictions.
Encouraging substance abuse by his younger siblings, and of course he's overcome his own. We had not heard from her throughout all this. Now she's speaking out. How does that potentially affect his ability to not only win enough Republican support, but maybe even a handful of Democrats who are thinking about doing it?
Well, I think it's just another hurdle for him. I mean, I think he has several hurdles. You know, his stance on the polio vaccine, his stance on vaccines in general, his past comments on abortion. I know there are some anti-abortion activists.
His stance on the shape of the earth.
Been trying to block his nomination.
Yeah.
So
his stance on the moon landing.
I think that he has, you know, a lot of problems potentially with his confirmation, and this is just the latest. And it's, you know, very personal comments that she's making, you know, about a family member, and I think it will definitely catch the heads, maybe not of Republicans, but certainly of Democrats.
I mean, even suggesting that her father and his father would have been ashamed of what he's been doing. It's a pretty incredible letter. You should check it out if you're interested. Nancy Cook, Julie Crace-Brufke, thank you both for being here. Appreciate it.
All right, chat. We are, what, at 67%. That's 2/3 of the way towards the dono goal. So we're kind of closing in on it. What is it, like at 33% from getting there? It looks like...
It was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
Okay, Wooddefault Hiss, that's like 28 plus 15.
Because it was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
So like 43, is that right? And then philosophy tube at 47, is that right? 47 and oh no, it's not. 'Cause I gotta take the Vox Populi out. Okay. Oh my god, chat, you're making me math tonight. Yeah, 40. Okay, so yeah, what if alt hist slightly ahead? I think, but ever so slightly. We'll see, chat. It looks like what if alt hist is slightly ahead right now, with new philosophy tube in second place. Remember, you could still vote. If you haven't already, the vote is open on the full scale YouTube stream, the full screen stream. That's where you find it. That's where you vote. And while you're there, why not leave me a like, because it helps me out a lot. You can also affect the polls when you donate by letting me know in the chat which of these topics you support. I will be happy to put your money where your mouth is and add it up there as a percentage bonus to help push your favorite topic over the line and get that as bonus content, which I will do after this next segment if we end up hitting that dono goal, which we are 33% of the way from.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Robert F. Kennedy.
A stark warning from Caroline Kennedy to U.S.
I
Senator.
thought she was going to give us a content warning or something. So a stark warning for anyone who's disturbed by animal cruelty, because we're about to talk about RFK Jr.
About her cousin, RFK Jr., who she does not think should be confirmed as Health and Human Services Secretary.
I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator.
She wrote this letter to a group of senators and alleges that her cousin is, quote, addicted to power, has given hypocritical advice on vaccines, led family members, quote, down the path of addiction, and describes disturbing scenes at the places where he's lived.
His basement, his garage, his dorm room were always the center of the action, where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in a blender to feed to his hawk.
Okay, I gotta say, the most disturbing thing about this, right? And I'm guessing that's how you feed hawks, right? So it's like, I couldn't handle it, but whatever. If he's doing that shit while he's on drugs, I don't know.
It was often a perverse scene of despair and violence.
Yeah, I hope the mice were dead beforehand. Oh yeah, it's not clear what she's saying.
Let's bring in the reporter who broke this story, Jacqueline Alemany of The Washington Post. Mark McKinnon is also with us, former advisor to George W. Bush and John McCain and creator of the...
Oh my God. He looks like a combination Paul Newman, Jeffrey Epstein, and Lyndon B. Johnson. What is going on there? With a little Hunter S. Thompson thrown into... What is going on there, chat? What is happening here? Who is this guy? He's a Republican advisor? Okay.
The circus. So, Jacqueline, I don't ever remember reading a letter quite like this. Help us understand some more of the things that are in here and why she ultimately decided to write this letter.
Yeah, Chris, thanks so much for having me this afternoon. This was a pretty searing and devastating letter that Caroline Kennedy, the former ambassador to Australia under former President Biden, sent to Democratic and Republican lawmakers who are going to be confronted with her cousin's nomination hearings starting tomorrow and on Thursday, essentially warning them, advising them to vote against her cousin. She, as you know, was reluctant to get involved in this conversation. She did not comment on RFK's politics or involvement with his own campaign. And
does anybody remember where she popped up? Because she did. I remember her popping up somewhere. I think she was like Let me look at her wiki real quick.
The Trump presidential
Let me do some-
campaign during the campaign period. She
do some Divorcepedia research.
Reluctantly commented on RFK's politics as it relates to vaccines and the public health sector at an event in Australia in November. But as she lays out in this letter to lawmakers, she did not want to get involved in having to discuss the lives and challenges that her family members face, but felt compelled to do so because of how well she knows RFK and what she knows about public health as well, having served and participated in some of the public efforts around vaccination and public health. She not only lists some of his challenges early on in his career, but says that he is essentially, she calls him a hypocrite for advocating that families.
She ran for Hillary's old seat in 2008. She was criticized for not voting in a number of Democratic primaries and general elections, and for not providing details about her political views. Was that it? Is that what I remember her from? She was ambassador to Japan from 2013 to 2017 under Obama. And she was the ambassador to Australia under Joe Biden. Okay, I guess that's what I remember her from.
Of sick children not vaccinate their children while his children are vaccinated. She also says that he seeks to enrich himself through propagating some of these anti-vaccine beliefs, such as refusing to recuse himself from a lawsuit that he's filed against the HPV vaccine, citing a New York Times report that the Washington Post has not independently confirmed. But there are a list of things she goes through in this letter about why exactly she opposes the nomination. It might not necessarily dissuade any Republicans, but there were a few Democrats who were on the fence that could really firm up opposition from them.
She does point out in this letter, Mark, that
there'd have to be some Republicans voting against him too.
there are 28 cousins, and obviously both she and RFK Jr.'s dads were assassinated. They share that. And there's another part of the letter that I found particularly telling. She writes, Bobby continues to grandstand off my father's assassination and that of his own father. It is incomprehensible that someone who is willing to exploit their own painful family tragedies for publicity.
Okay, Sparks, you're a little late, but I think you're coming in maybe with good information. That was actually Caitlin Collins, not Aaron Burnett.
Would be in charge of American life.
But Sparks can't hear me because Sparks is watching an earlier part of the VOD, apparently.
And death situation.
Thank you, nonetheless, for the super chat.
And
it gets us up to
including much of
the magical number of 69.
Let me ask you, do you see this having an impact?
I really don't. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody that the Kennedy family is across the board opposed to Robert Kennedy's nomination. But that's why he's such a prized asset for the Republican Party. This would be like a member of the Bush family being in the Biden cabinet. The question is, will it have any effect on confirmation? And
that actually wouldn't be that surprising. That's not actually that surprising. Right, that kind of shit happens all the time. Like, not everybody in a political dynasty family is on the same side of politics, right? That's not actually that.
The fact is, it's certainly not going to have an impact on any Republicans. In fact, just the opposite. There is,
and he's a great example of that, right? He's
notion that there could be some Democrats out there willing to vote for Kennedy. But I don't see that any of the information is particularly new. I mean, it's new that Carolyn Kennedy's coming out and being so vocal, but there's nothing in that letter, at least that I heard, that's particularly newsworthy in terms of information that we didn't already know about Robert Kennedy. The thing that I find interesting is that abortion policy is not just a big health policy for Republicans. It's like the biggest major policy initiative across the board of anything that Republicans care about. So you'd think that that would be a mitigating factor in support for Kennedy. And yet there's not a single Republican pro-life organization, with the exception of the one that Mike Pence leads, that's come out against Robert Kennedy. And even very pro-life senators have said they're satisfied with Kennedy's remarks that he may have had differences in the past, but he is 100% across the board in alignment with Donald Trump.
Narwhal_by super chatted $10. What if? Stick with me here, chat. A Cheney was in the Harris administration. That would have been wild.
That would have been wild. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if one or more of the Cheneys, possibly including Dick Cheney himself, publicly endorsed a Democratic candidate? The next thing you're going to tell me is Scooter Libby is voting Kamala. Thank you for the super chat, Narwhal by nature.
Policies on this issue.
You did mention that conservative advocacy group that is headed by Mike Pence, and they actually just today put an ad out. Let me play a little bit of that.
RFK Jr. is a Democrat plant, a radical left liberal.
Wait, are they trying to, what are they doing with this ad? What is this ad doing, right? So this is reminding people that RFK Jr. ran as an independent, nominally against Trump and Biden. I think the assumption was that it was because he had a background in the Democratic Party. He would draw more from Biden than from Trump. But in the end of the day, it seemed like he drew more from Trump than from Biden because he's a conspiracy theorist and he was taking that conspiracy theory vote. That made Trump really mad. That made Trump have to come out and say he's a Democrat. He's a Democrat. He's a liberal. He's in favor of the Green New Scam. Like, he had to just do all this shit to try to make sure that none of his voters voted for RFK instead. And obviously at the end, RFK endorses Trump. But what is this here for?
A lot of people.
Why are we seeing, who are they trying to remind that RFK opposed Trump?
People think that Junior is a conservative. He's not. He's more liberal than anybody running on the Democrat side.
But now there are freaking communists invading.
So whatever, 6-7 months ago, they're playing what Donald Trump had to say very disparagingly against RFK Jr. back then. But I think to your point about abortion, and there were a lot of folks when Kennedy was first selected who thought, well, his pro-abortion stance will tank him with conservatives. What do you really think changed? Or is this just we're going to give Donald Trump what he wants?
Well, I think that people have looked at the other confirmation process and they've realized that if they don't get on board, there's going to be consequences. Trump has made that very.
I hate this. I hate a president that rules by fucking intimidation. That's the grossest shit ever. By intimidation and favoritism.
But I think they also really like the idea of having the most iconic name in Democratic history, Kennedy, on the Trump team. I mean,
yeah, that's a QAnon thing.
Love that notion.
QAnon thing. There is a fucking. If you've ever read QAnon shit, they believe that not him, but would it be his brother? No. This would be his cousin, John F. Kennedy Jr. They believe that his cousin, who died in a plane wreck in the 90s, is secretly still alive and is waiting to come out. And in some versions of the thing, JFK is alive too. And they're going to come out, they're going to endorse Trump, and, they're going to ride into power. It's a weird QAnon Facebook boomer thing. And so this guy kind of fits the bill, right? He's the cousin of the guy that they were talking about.
Of course, his vaccine background is in absolute alignment. By the way, it's interesting today to see that it was reported that in Kansas, the largest tuberculosis outbreak in history just was reported. So it's interesting what's happening on the vaccine front, but again, that's very much in alignment with MAGA voters, and I think a lot of them like that and are willing to put aside his past history on abortion just for that reason.
They're willing to put aside the fact that Donald Trump is Mr. Operation Warp Speed, is the guy that had Fauci working for him. they're willing to put aside a lot of what they hate about the lockdown and the vaccine. It was shit that Trump did. The reason they forgive Trump is he came out and he said all the conspiracy stuff. Like at first he was like, "Oh yeah, the virus is gonna be gone by April, folks. You'll never know it was here. It'll be all gone." And when it wasn't all gone, he went into he knew that this was gonna fuck his election chances up, right? And so he starts going like, he starts talking about ivermectin, and he's talking about hydroxychloroquine. He's talking about, if you could shine the sun into the body, the COVID would die, and just like, yeah, he goes full on into conspiracy land. And so despite the fact that they almost don't care what his policy was, because the way that these people see Trump is that he wasn't really president. The deep state was still in charge. And so it was the deep state doing all that stuff. And Trump is not to blame because he made the right virtue signals, or in this case, vice signals.
Jacqueline Alemany, great reporting as always. Mark McKinnon, always good to have you on the program. Thanks to both of you.
Always good to have you on the program. Yeah, you really added a lot to this broadcast, Mark. I'm so glad you showed up.
Part of his promise to reduce government spending, President Trump is making more than 2 million federal workers an offer. Quit now and accept a severance package. NBC News first reporting federal employees received the offer by email late this afternoon. The White House expects 5 to 10% of the federal workforce to accept it, which could lead to $100 billion in annual savings. But tonight, in a blow to the administration, a federal judge has temporarily blocked the president's attempt at another government shakeup, after the Office of Management and Budget overnight ordered a temporary pause on grant, loan, or federal financial assistance programs that might...
Look, this is what you're getting from NBC News if you're watching on... It's all kind of squashed up, right? We're talking about the him offering to buy out federal employees and, who knows, replace them with loyalists, not replace them at all, degrade the functioning of... offices and of the government that he doesn't like. Who knows what his goal? I'll do more research and try to figure out what that's all about, right? But yeah, they're squishing the story that we just covered into this story as well.
Might run counter to President Trump's executive orders.
It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our...
And so, like, that would be, I would assume, whatever they're going for with this is, is going to, at the very least, performatively target trans people, performatively target DEI. Maybe not so performatively. That's what worries me, is we're talking about Medicaid, right? I am very worried about where this might be going. And I have been convinced today that I need to redouble my efforts to get the fuck out of this country. Jesus Christ.
Our federal bureaucracy and agencies. President Trump is looking out for you by issuing this pause because he is being good steward of your taxpayer dollars.
Democrats immediately assailed the president's action.
Law enforcement, rural hospitals, aid to the elderly, food for people in need. This decision is lawless, dangerous, destructive, cruel.
While several state Democratic attorneys general sued to block the move.
When Congress dedicates funding for a program, the president cannot pull that funding on a whim.
But Republicans defending the freeze.
Let's get a handle on all this spending and figure out if it's going where it's supposed to go.
Tonight, the White House saying individual federal assistance would not be paused or reviewed under its plan.
Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause.
But all of it sparked confusion about who would be impacted. The White House says Head Start, the early childhood education program for low-income families, would not be affected. But Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy posting, quote, Head Start reimbursement system is shut down in his state. What was your reaction when you heard about this order overnight?
Yeah, it was a shock to ask.
While in Florida, Talithia Edwards' 4-year-old son Raymond is one of the more than
Star Banking, thank you for the super sticker.
800,000 children served by the program. She told me the uncertainty is nerve-wracking.
You look for other options, but there aren't many options when you think about affordability in child care.
Garrett, that judge temporarily blocking the pause on federal assistance until a hearing next week. Meantime, President Trump has issued a new executive order impacting transgender children and teens. What can you tell us about that?
That's right, Lester. This order says the U.S. will not fund, promote, or assist in any way with transition surgeries for anyone under age 19, including directing government health care providers to exclude coverage for pediatrics, transgender surgeries, or hormone treatments, all of it likely to spark a legal challenge. Lester?
Thanks for watching. Stay updated.
I love that people's medical care has become a political issue now. Right? It's not the doctor and the patient, and in this case, you know, the case of pediatrics, the doctor, the patient, and their parent. No, it's the government. It's the government that's going to step in and decide.
Because it was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals. Because it was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
They left out so much, yeah.
But now there are freaking communist invading.
Well, I mean, it's like the thing that they say whenever anybody talks about like trans people in sports. They're like, well, no, they went through the puberty of the opposite sex, so you know they've got an advantage, right? In the case of trans women, and the only way that you wouldn't have an advantage is if you had really cool parents that allowed you to go on puberty blockers and then later on hormone therapy, but they're trying to shut off that as well. I mean, I'm never going to be free narwhal by nature, and I'm never going to stop fighting. Like, I'm not moving to another country to like forget about what's going on in the US. I'm moving so I can make sure that I get to say what I want about the US. If I'm moving, that's the whole thing, is it's so fucking expensive, and having the rent raised by 50% because one of my roommates moved out was not something I expected to have happen. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to watch.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
President Trump is defending his decision to grant full, complete, and unconditional presidential pardons to over 1,500 of his supporters involved in the violent January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Trump also commuted the sentences of 14 members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, including Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers.
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy I was talking about.
Who'd been convicted of seditious conspiracy. On Wednesday, Rhodes visited Capitol Hill to meet with Republican lawmakers after being released from prison. Critics of Trump's sweeping pardons include...
And look, he's convicted of that because he came up with the plan. Right? Not everyone in this crowd marched down there with the intention of breaking into the Capitol. Now, the ones that broke into the Capitol did, but they were pushed to do that by Proud Boys that were there, I think, without their leadership, and by the Oath Keepers who were there with Stuart Rose. Like, right, he was his charges being higher are because he was he was essentially the one pushing them to do this.
the Fraternal Order of Police, which had endorsed Trump in each of the last 3 elections. In a joint statement, the FOP and the International Association of Chiefs of Police said, quote, "When perpetrators of crimes, especially serious crimes, are not held fully accountable, it sends a dangerous message that the consequences for attacking law enforcement are not severe, potentially emboldening others to commit similar acts of violence." During an interview with Sean Hannity on Fox News, Trump defended the pardons.
And you know what they were there for? They were protesting the vote because they knew the election was rigged, and they were be allowed to protest the vote. You should be allowed to. You know, when the day comes,
you shouldn't be able to invade the Capitol.
No, ready? Most of the people were absolutely innocent. Okay, but forgetting all about that, these people have served horribly a long time. It would be very...
This is true of every fucking prisoner. We live in a society which imprisons a higher percentage of its population than almost anyone else. And we very likely imprison people too long. That being said, one person that prison might be the right choice for is the guy that tried to imprison, take hostage, or maybe even unalive elected members of the legislature in order to prevent the losing candidate from leaving the White House.
very cumbersome to go.
And as you're going to see, there's more to this guy, Stuart Rhodes, than that as well.
Look, you know how many people we're talking about? 1,500 people. Almost all of them should not have been, this should not have happened. And the other thing is this, some of those people with the police, true, but they were very minor incidents.
President Trump did the interview with Hannity in the Oval Office. 5 police officers who served at the Capitol on January 6 died in the days and weeks after the attack. A total of 140 police officers were assaulted by Trump supporters that day. On Wednesday, former Washington, D.C. police officer Michael Fanone criticized the pardons for the rioters. Fanone suffered a heart attack and a traumatic brain injury after he was beaten and electrocuted with a taser while trying to defend the Capitol.
I made my way to the front line, and at one point, I was pulled off the police line by an individual. His name is Albuquerque Head. He's from Tennessee. He put me in a chokehold.
I'm sorry, his last name is Head, and his first name is Albuquerque? And
pulled me out into the crowd. And if you watch my body-worn camera footage, you'll hear him yell out, "I've got one." Once I was out in the crowd, you know, I was beaten, restrained. At one point, an individual, Kyle Young, lunged at me while I was being restrained and attempted to remove my firearm from its holster. All while, you know, other individuals were, you know, kind of egging him on, telling him to kill me with my gun. Another individual, Daniel Rodriguez, used a taser device, applied it to my neck numerous times. And finally, Thomas Sibic stripped me of my badge and my radio, all while I was being, again, restrained and beaten. You know, these are the individuals that pled guilty and were sentenced, and Donald Trump saw it fit to pardon them.
That was former Washington, D.C. police officer Michael Fanone, who suffered a heart attack and a traumatic brain injury after he was beaten and electrocuted with a taser while trying to defend the Capitol. We're joined now by the son of one of the January 6th insurrectionists who was just pardoned. Jackson Reffitt's father, Guy Reffitt, was the first person to be convicted over January 6th. Guy Reffitt was a member of a far-right militia called the Texas Three Percenters. During his trial, jurors were shown video of Reffitt filming.
I really want people to notice also that
because it was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communists.
Prosecutions were going preferentially against people who committed violence.
So peaceful up here, but now there are freaking
You can't say the same thing about the deportations. They are sweeping up anyone and everyone.
Himself saying
there actually aren't enough violent criminal undocumented immigrants in order to fulfill Trump's quota. Remember, he's looking for 1,800 souls per day to drag out and do who knows what with.
Drag those people out of the Capitol by their ankles. I just want to see Pelosi's head hit every effing stair on the way out, and leader Mitch McConnell, too.
It was Guy Reffitt's own son, Jackson, who tipped the FBI off about his dad after January 6th. Jackson Reffitt now fears for his life after Trump pardoned his father and 1,500 others involved in the insurrection. Jackson has already received numerous death threats. Jackson Reffitt joins us now from an undisclosed location. Hi, Jackson. Thanks so much for being with us. Can you talk about what your father did at the time, what you reported, and why you're so afraid right now?
Well, at the time, my father was really getting into all this, 3%er militia movement following the events of 2020 leading into 2021. And that quickly escalated in 2020, bleeding into January 6th, talking about what he's going to do. So I informed the FBI just to alleviate a lot of the paranoia and unknowingness that I had at that time. And I didn't realize it, but until January 5th, when he left, I did not know he committed to going to something like January 6th. And he was already on the way. And he then stormed up the Capitol steps with body armor, zip cuffs, and a handgun on his side, and came home clicking his heels.
Wait, was he the guy with zip cuffs? Maybe there was more. Maybe there was more than one guy with zip cuffs.
And joy and validation over what had happened, and it was a terrifying moment in my life to think that happened and happened to our family. It's unreal to even think about now.
So, Jackson, how do you understand why your father was drawn to these groups?
I understand it to be, the fear-mongering that the Trump administration really put on these people. I understand capitalism can atomize people and families and make them feel so alone and
oh shit, based,
destroyed,
alienated, maybe.
But, post 2016, my family really had a huge crisis when the price of oil collapsed. My father lost his job from overseas. And when we hit back in America, we were picking up bed frames off the side of the road, and sleeping on the same blow up mattress, downloading movies from Netflix, bringing them home and watching them on the TV because we had no internet. And leading from the Trump administration from 2016 onwards, my father really gripped onto what.
Wait, is he doing ANCAP stuff? Wait, what did he say that was ANCAP?
Really gathered what he was offering and trying to give to my family. Of course, that only led to him running up the steps of the Capitol.
The interviewer sounds like the newscaster from Family Guy.
With a gun on his waist and years in prison. But, I understand it to be that he was trying to defend my family and do what he thought was right, but, that inevitably led to what it is now.
Well, and Jackson, but following this pardon, you said that, quote, I can't imagine what he's going to be willing to do now. It could get a whole hell of a lot worse. Explain what you fear might happen.
So to look at how I'm feeling now, we have to look back post January 6, 2021, is my dad came home more proud than ever for doing something that
He was a proud boy, and he was 50-something years old. He was the oldest boy on the planet Earth, and he was very proud.
Who never knew he existed told him to do, and now he knows he exists. Donald Trump gave him that presidential pardon to validate and justify his actions, and the validation now, I'm sure, is swimming through the crowds of the people who participated in January 6th. Like, that is dangerous, to justify actions like that and to completely validate them is going to be deadly. Not only for me, my situation is explosive, and some would call a dramatic, visualization of what's going on in this country, but there are thousands and thousands of people who are just like me, who do not have the same privilege I do of being able to drop everything, move, buy a handgun. All this stuff is very lucky for me to have the opportunity to secure myself. Other people don't have that luxury, and I fear so much for them.
On Tuesday, former Oath Keepers leader Stewart Rhodes spoke to reporters after his 18-year prison sentence was commuted by Trump. He went back to the scene of the crime, to the Capitol.
Oh, yeah, didn't he get invited by the president?
Yes, I feel vindicated and validated. Yes, absolutely. Of course, I haven't gotten a pardon yet.
I don't remember if it was the inauguration, but it was like some event.
But I'm applying for one. I'm pretty positive I'll get one. When they review my case, they'll understand that I was targeted for who I am, not for anything I did.
So Stewart Rhodes' sentence was commuted. He's pushing.
I was targeted for who I am as the guy that planned the whole thing.
For a full pardon. That means he can get guns. Jackson, if you could explain why you are so afraid of your dad. Do you fear your father pardoned? He can get weapons. We just showed a picture of him together with Stewart Rhodes. Do you fear he will go after you, that he will kill you? Has he ever threatened that?
Well, first off, I want to say that that's the first time I'm hearing that clip with Stewart Rhodes, and that's flabbergasting to hear. I've been saying this stuff about validation and justification. That clip just, dropped my stomach. That was terrifying to actually hear a member say that. But when it comes to my father, yes, of course I'm terrified of all this stuff. I have nothing but paranoia and unknowingness about what's going to happen in the future, other than what I've heard and witnessed and seen my father and my mother get further and further radicalized throughout these years. I was ignorant when I was 18 when all this happened to think that prison would...
Wait, so he was 18 in 2020. That means he's like 22 now? Yeah, I don't think I was this well-spoken when I was 22.
...distanced himself from these militias, and his final testimony to the judge, he begged and pleaded that he was never going to participate in this far-right militia nonsense, but he's just been isolated and put into an echo chamber of these people that are going to validate and justify him. So I have no idea what my father is thinking right now. He can say whatever he wants, but his actions are the real thing that matter, and his actions have not shown any sort of growth. It has shown a further and further hole, a rabbit hole. I love my father deeply, but this is not a healthy thing to dive into.
I want to bring another guest into this conversation to talk more about Trump's January 6 pardons. We're joined by former FBI Special Agent Mike German, who once worked undercover in white supremacist and militia groups. He's a fellow with the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law School. He has a new book out. It's called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. Mike German is joining us from San Diego. Mike, welcome back to Democracy Now! As you listen to Jackson and we look at who was on those steps and inside the Capitol, particularly the violent people, on the one hand, you have 140 officers who were injured. You have 5 who died in the days that followed, 2 by suicide, another after being gassed. You have the ones that were so seriously injured, like Fanone. And on the other side, you also had officers and sheriffs, a number of cops and military, even active duty, were in that crowd. Talk about your findings.
Wait, does that mean, chat, is Jimmy Pesto coming back to Bob's Burgers? I forgot about this. The guy that plays Jimmy Pesto in Bob's Burgers was at January 6th. I don't know if he got charges or went to jail, but I do know that he was fired from Bob's Burgers because of it.
Thanks for
He had to replace Jimmy Pesto.
me, Amy. I think the pardons definitely send a message both to the far-right militant movement that political violence against Trump's enemies will be rewarded by the highest office in the land. And it also sends a message to law enforcement that there's no value in investigating and prosecuting far-right violence.
He's probably blacklisted in Hollywood because of wokeness, no doubt, because of wokeness.
Fortunately, far-right violence has been something that law enforcement has rarely paid very much attention to. Even to this day, the FBI doesn't track the number of violent white supremacist attacks occur in this country or how many people are killed by those attacks. So this will reinforce what has been a blind spot for the FBI and generally for law enforcement. Obviously, there has been law enforcement support for these movements for some time. In fact, as an FBI agent, I received those warnings before I went undercover that, hey, you have to be careful who you talk to in law enforcement about these cases because there are
cops and Klan hand in hand
sympathizers within law enforcement, and nobody on a joint terrorism task force thought that was an odd warning. And likewise, those warnings have been provided since, documented in a 2006 intelligence report and the 2015 FBI counterterrorism policy guide that warns agents investigating domestic terrorism cases against white supremacists that the subjects of their investigations often
probably guest on Kill Tony in a week.
Have active contacts.
He'll be all over the podcast circuit
with law enforcement.
He'll be on Theo Vaughn.
This is a problem that's long been understood within law enforcement, but we don't have a national program designed to identify those officers and protect the public from them.
Jimmy Pesto, yeah, he pardoned them all, so I'm not surprised.
Mike German, so is that the explanation for why, as you said, that white supremacist violence is deprioritized by the FBI and other government agencies? The reason is that they are complicit. There are people within the FBI and these agencies that are complicit with white supremacists?
Not just that, but the white supremacy infects all of our institutions, and that includes prosecutors'
especially cops.
Offices, that includes judges, that includes corporate boards. Everywhere we see racial disparities that impact communities of color negatively and privilege white and male communities. So, it's not just the law enforcement officers. If we saw on January 6th, there were a number of current and former law enforcement officers participating, but also current and former military people, members of state and local legislatures. So this is a pervasive problem, but law enforcement is designed to protect the American public. And here we see President Trump clearly sending the message that these institutions designed to protect the American public are instead going to be used to protect his support.
I don't know about designed. Oh God, Chad, don't get me started about law enforcement. Look, it'd be nice if law enforcement was designed originally to protect the American people. That's not where it came from, though. Our modern day police institution doesn't come from a proud tradition of defending the American people. It comes from a tradition of attacking the American people, attacking runaway slaves to bring them back to the South and back to their owners, attacking union members on strike to try to bust up those strikes, right? That's the police.
But now there
right? There are no others. That's where that came from. It wasn't this it didn't come from this loyal order of night watchmen or something. Shouts out to chat also, Irene. Thanks.
And target his enemies.
So what's your reading, Mike German, of
seriously,
what the
thanks.
effect of these pardons will be, not just on white supremacist violence, but violence in general, political violence in the U.S.?
It's fucking open season, because now you know that even if you commit a violent crime, that the orangutan in chief will give you a pardon.
And that's really the big problem, is that it's totally unpredictable. Once the highest office in the land gives a green light to political violence, it's very hard to predict who is ultimately going to be harmed. And, if you look at some of these recent attacks, including the attempted assassination of President Trump, these are people who are, according to the government's intelligence that they've released, people who have been immersed in these conspiracy theories that Jackson was talking about. And it's all, even when I was in the movement, it was very hard to predict how any one piece of news would be interpreted in this group that has a very different sense of reality than the general public. So it will be very disruptive within the far right militant movement as well, because these people who went to prison are now coming out, but others have rebuilt these organizations in their own image, and it's going to be a very
let's hope there's a fight.
Difficult period, I'm afraid.
I wanted to end with Jackson. Jackson, you're in an undisclosed location now. Your mother and sisters sided with your father. Only you and your boyfriend know exactly where you are. Your boyfriend, transgender. On his first day back in office, President Trump also moved to roll back protections for the transgender community. Do you think that LGBTQ and transgender issues also drives your father in your fear of what he could do to you?
I don't know anymore. It's been 4 years, leading up, and as he spiraled in 2020, it got worse and worse with his, hate towards LGBTQ and queer adjacent people. But, seeing my own mother not be able to handle it, as she also delved into this far-right agenda that she pandered to and fed into, I can't imagine how far my father has gotten. I'm terrified to even confront him about it, because I don't know anymore, and I don't want to be hurt like that. I can handle, their frustrations and their anger and how sad they are with me. I want to be there with them with that. I want to be able to work with them on that. But for something like that, with my wonderful partner, my boyfriend, that is so hard to compromise with. I can handle everything else. I can figure stuff out. I can distance. I can be safe. I have all those options, but when it comes to something like that bigoted behavior and language, that terrifies me. And as it's gotten worse throughout the years, I have no idea where it lays now. And with something like that, I don't know how to manage.
Well, Jackson, I want to thank you for being with us. You're very brave to speak out from where you are. Jackson Reffitt, his father, Guy Reffitt, just pardoned by Donald Trump for his role in the January 6th insurrection.
Wait, so yeah, for some reason I was thinking...
peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
For some reason I was thinking this was...
Because it was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking
what's his name?
communist
Stuart
invading
Rhodes
radicals.
is like the Stuart Rhodes was his relative. No, it's somebody else. But
And Mike, thank you so much. We hope to have you back on soon to talk more about your book and your findings. Former FBI special agent, fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law School. Mike Brennan's new book is called Policing White Supremacy: The Enemy Within.
Oh my God, what a fucking conundrum! Given where given where the institution of the police in the United States comes from, yeah, policing white supremacy out of there is going to be nearly impossible. That's what no one ever understood about the abolition movement. It wasn't about abolishing law and order. It wasn't about crime is now legal. The idea was like, hey, could we maybe do better? Could we maybe do better than an organization that traces its history to slave patrols and anti-union thugs? Could we maybe try an organization that's started off to protect and serve, and that doesn't have this history and this repetition of a culture, which is going to be like more, racist than the rest of America, which is going to be more conservative naturally, which is going to let, like right-wing terrorist movements like the Klan off the hook while going after protesters. Anyway, chat, that is about it. Testing, huh? Yeah, if the volume's bad, let me know early, okay? It's been bad for a while. That's also bad for me, so thanks for letting me know that the volume, it's usually if I'm not talking directly into the microphone enough that does it, like right here. A little bit more gain. There we go. As long as I'm not blowing it out. Anyway, chat. We're at 81% of the dono goal, 19% from hitting that magical number. I'm not sure if we're going to get there tonight, chat, because that's about all I've got for you. I feel like it's a good time. Now is a good time as any to invite those of you watching me on Shorts over to the main stream. I'm going to throw this link at you, and if you want to, click on it. If not, you might even be rated into this without even knowing. There's the pinned message. Click on that. I dare you. I dare you. All right. We end the short stream rating all those people into what? Oh, okay.